Hello, everybody. Hello, Brian. Hello, Shams in the chat. You know it's going to be a good show when we got Shams here. I'm really excited.
Shams is here to keep us posted with all the late breaking news that happens during the show.
Yeah, it happens, I think, at least once a show. I'm like saying like, man, this player like had really low ice time. I'm kind of concerned that Shams is like, he actually missed like part of the third period because of this or that reason. And then it's
that's
like,
actually,
okay.
It's funny because that's how I feel talking to you. And so it's funny that that's how you feel talking to Shams.
Right. So we've sort of got a hierarchy here.
There's a hierarchy of
the most in the know.
Yeah, of attention being like of plugged inness.
So
if someone
like,
wants to make Shams feel bad about it, I dare you. I dare you to try.
Who knows more about what's going on, Shams or like Bob McKenzie?
Definitely Shams. Like
okay.
Easily Shams.
Is it possible that Shams is the most in the... Well, I don't know, maybe like a Dimitri or Dom Lucijan, like one of these people, or like a beat writer. Maybe some of the beat writers might be more than Shams.
That's true.
They know the thing before they tweet it. But are they also know... but they're not... But they don't know all the teams. Anyhow, thanks everyone for watching the YouTube video, either live or just after the fact. If you're watching it after the fact, feel free to also subscribe to the podcast over on your podcast app, you know, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. You're going to get a full edited version, plus extra shows. I don't know if you're aware of this. If you just watch YouTube videos, that means you're missing the amazing Short Shifts podcast every Wednesday morning and Friday morning that Ben and Lewis record. So enjoy the YouTube video and then go enjoy our really premium, no mistakes audio content. The people here on YouTube know how many mistakes we actually make, but the audio listeners think we're just perfect every time one take.
We are.
This time we will be.
I can't lie to the YouTube.
I'd love to do this all in one take. I think it's possible. Theoretically, we should be able to do this one day, right?
I mean, every radio show ever made is done in one take.
Yeah, and they're usually pretty good. The problem is because we have notes. I think the fact that we have notes makes it us have more mistakes because we want to just say it the way we prepared it, as opposed to if I was just chatting. Like when I'm chatting with my friends, I'm not like slobbering over my words like I am with
hang
you.
on, let me take that again.
Yeah, generally. I've also been a guest on like other podcasts rarely, and I feel like I always just like knock it out. Like when I interview beat writers,
so much
also.
we want to say. And like, I think, I think radio, like live radio, like it's not like about research and getting it right. It's about just like talking and engaging.
Yeah. Filling time.
we're trying to talk and inform. It's harder.
Too hard.
Although like, that's my job. And I also, sometimes I say like, let me say this another way.
That's smart. Well, yeah, because I guess you're gauging the students as like eyes and if they're like actually understanding what you're saying. We don't get... That'd be cool actually if we could have like a live studio audience and then so when you're explaining some like advanced stat thing, IPP, and then like everyone is looking at you like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Then you can like, okay, actually, let me try to explain this another way. That maybe be good. Maybe one day we could do a live Keeping Karlsson show. That's actually a bit of a dream of mine. I think that would be a lot of fun. Especially if you could sell out like a decent sized room. Like I don't want to do a live show and have like 5 people there. That would be kind of...
Right.
Then I mean... It'd be still fun. I'm sure we'd have some beers, but at that point, we don't even need to record a show. We could just hang out.
I look forward to the day when we can do that.
Yeah, I guess first we got to still get over COVID stuff. Okay, so the Rangers here. Lewis is saying in the chat here that Shesterkin came in to play the third. Buffalo, it's like Dell and Georgiev both did equally as bad.
It's a race but now to the bottom.
But like the Rangers are like, okay, we actually have a better goalie here. And Buffalo was like, we need to save. Well, I guess also to be fair, like Buffalo plays again tomorrow. So I guess they want to save Tokarski for that game. But like Buffalo has a chance to win this game. But anyway, Aaron Dell's like... What happened to him? I guess he was never really that great. He had like one good stretch on San Jose.
It's nice to hear you finally say that.
What, I was a big Aaron Dell stan?
Yeah. You've always been like, but aren't there?
I don't know. I don't
Or
recall.
like, sorry, but isn't there a chance? And I was often like, he's given us no reason to think so. And you'd be like, okay, but maybe.
I think, no, you're thinking of a different guy. You're thinking of Aiden Hill, not Aaron Dell.
No, I'm thinking of a lot of guys. Aiden Hill, I have above Aaron Dell. But you have a lot of hope for a lot of goalies who have, Elon, when someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Okay.
There's a piece of life advice for you.
Yeah, just like how Darcy Kemper showed you who he was. And then
he changed.
He changed. Yes, exactly. People change.
There were signs of change.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate the advice. And I guess with that, we can just get on going here. Greatest fantasy hockey podcast in the world. Oh, that's why the guy thinks we're full of ourselves, because we start the show by saying, oh no, now we changed it. We used to be greatest. Now we're longest running. Yeah. Longest fantasy hockey podcast in the world.
Very humble.
Hosted by two guys who I didn't think about this one in advance. Hosted by two guys who what? Who would rather? Oh yeah, I'll just like tie it into the plan of the show.
Who already celebrated Thanksgiving?
Why, when's the American Thanksgiving?
I think it's Thursday. That's why there's no hockey on.
Oh right. So we're gonna be bored. Okay, that's a good one. I got it. Good job, Brian.
We'll be very bored with no turkey and no football that we care about.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who've already celebrated Thanksgiving because we're in Canada, so we're going to be super bored on Thursday. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski, and with me, as always, to break down everything that's gone down in the past week of NHL action, it's my good friend and yours, the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Combe.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode where, as you mentioned, Elon, we have a day coming up with absolutely zero hockey. So if you're in America, happy Thanksgiving in advance. If you're in Canada or anywhere else around the world, we have listeners, I think, in at least 14 or 15 countries. Then just, I don't know, maybe it's a stress-free day. Maybe you really lean in to what looks like boredom, but maybe it's just a day to take stock of what you have in fantasy and I don't know, start planning for next week there. I've already shot the boredom aspect of it. It's hard to sit still in fantasy, which is why we are coming at you with another episode full of fantasy advice so that you can keep your team sharp and competing for that championship in your league all season long.
Yeah, definitely. On Thursday, that's the time where when everyone else in America is snoozing, literally, then you go and grab the primo free agents for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday slate. And Friday, don't forget, it's going to be a full day. So you're going to want to take a look and see who you're going to have on your bench on Friday. Drop that person, grab a Saturday player. You all know the drill. But okay, yeah, so we've got a big show for you today. We're excited to get into it. The plan is we're going to go over some hot streaks. Then we're going to play a game. I think it's the first time we've ever done this. We're going to play a game of Keeping Karlsson Would You Rather, where I'm just going to give Brian a hot streak and a cold streak, like a dueling player who's doing well, players doing badly, and ask him who would he rather have moving forward. And then we'll end with some quick hits and we'll try to knock this all out 90 to 120 minutes. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, this show's kind of long, why do you guys go for so long, like 2 hours? I have a hint for you. We had one review. By the way, I want to thank everyone who left us 5-star reviews after we announced our contest last week. We really super appreciate it. One person who gave us a not so good review said that the show's too long. So yeah, to that person, I would just say, you could listen for as long as you want the show to be. Then you stop listening, and then the show was like the perfect length for you, okay? Like, so just a hint. If you think it's a bit long, no one's forcing you to listen to the whole thing. But if you do listen through, I think we're going to have a lot of good stuff for you. Before we get to it, let's, of course, mention that Keeping Karlsson is presented by DobberHockey.com and super proud of it. Dobber Hockey is the #1 site for all your fantasy hockey news and notes. Great articles all the time. I love the daily ramblings. It's a must read every night before I go to bed. Plus, the tools at Frozen Tools are what I use to prep the show and, prep my fantasy life. I don't know what I would do, actually, without Frozen Tools. So it's all great. That's sweet over at DobberHockey.com. But with that, Brian, we're about to be ready to get into the content. But first, I believe we did want to thank all the people who gave us 5-star reviews and remind them about our cool contest we're running till the end of this month.
Yeah, so we have a raffle coming up for anybody who leaves us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Ideally, if you want to leave them elsewhere, by all means, send us a screenshot on Twitter or by some means, and we will enter you into a draw/Michael raffle to win a sweet Keeping Karlsson t-shirt that we will send you as thanks for writing a review and also as congratulations for your impeccable luck. So you can you have until the end of November to leave your 5-star written review on iTunes, because those are the only ones where we actually see the usernames for. And once you do that and claim your review by letting us know you've done it, you will be in that draw.
Yeah, you'll enter the Michael raffle and you'll win that sweet shirt. Yeah, I've got the American reviews up today. So I just want to thank, obviously, people from other countries also. We appreciate it, but I'll thank here from America, since you're the one celebrating Thanksgiving this week. FHC Goalie, McCarlo78, Benjamin Stark, Bunch of Pigeons, Mad Dog, 18,055, Canned 33, The Original Noob, Tape Talk Hockey. And yeah, thanks so much. By the way, Tape Talk Hockey said, Brian is a beauty. The boys kill it every episode. Must listen, but don't tell. And I'm just gonna say like, yeah, thanks for that second part. What's this? Brian is a beauty. What about me? I got a new haircut just for this show. Come on.
After you read that review, went out and got a haircut so you can compete. I'm not sure it's about looks. I'm not sure what it's about, frankly. But also in Canada, thanks TJUSA, Ryan Downey, Daniel Huff, Vanek 92, Mucker, Ben Let 87, Sean Avon, Ty Toms, Dudman 123, Sam Jerome, B Monkey 84, and King Ilf and Avid Heat. We really appreciate all of your reviews, and we encourage you, if you have not yet, to please leave us one and get your name in the draw.
Okay, but now let's do the work to actually earn those 5-star reviews. So here we go. Lots of fancy Here we go. Lots of content coming at you, starting with some hot streaks. And I want to start in Carolina, where the Hurricanes won their 4th in a row yesterday, beating the Kings 5-4. And of course, we saw production from the team's 2 biggest stars, Svechnikov and Aho, both currently sitting at 19 and 18 points respectively in 16 games, both just having amazing seasons. And with those two so hot, we of course need to highlight whoever is on that top line with them. And lately, it's been 19-year-old Seth Jarvis, who scored a goal for his 3rd straight game yesterday. So Jarvis, he's a 2020 13th overall pick. He was called back up. Oh no, sorry. Pick.
What is it? I want to know. What was so important?
No, I moved my mouse to the corner, which triggers me to like my screen to go to sleep.
Oh no.
13th overall pick. So
I heard I heard what keys you pressed for your password. Yeah.
So now you know. It's not like a phone. It's like an old rotary phone where you could like.
Oh, I can tell.
Okay. Pick. And he was called up back on October 31st. He put up points in his first 2 games, then was quiet for 4 games, but now is on this streak of 3 games in a row scoring a goal in what's got to be like one of the top third wheel situations in the league at the moment, playing with Aho and Svechnikov. He's also been seeing power play 2 times. So Brian, Carolina plays 4 games next week. So if anyone listening is in a somewhat deep league, you've got to imagine that we're going to recommend that you should consider grabbing Seth Jarvis, right? While he's on that sweet spot in the lineup and scoring goals every game.
Absolutely. Everything really looks great while Seth Jarvis is on the ice, including Seth Jarvis, this 19-year-old from Winnipeg, has now become the 17th player in his draft class to play an NHL game. This is a 2020 draft class. So, of course, Lafreniere and Stutzle have already played their game. No, it's
Lafreniere. We've already corrected it so many times.
Okay. So, of course, Lafreniere and Stutzle have already played theirs, but also guys who are more around the Seth Jarvis part of the draft. Maybe not so much Lucas Raymond, but Dawson Mercer, Jamie Drysdale, and Tom Lundell, who've all looked at home this year in NHL minutes and on fantasy rosters. Some as fixtures, some as streamers, but here's Seth Jarvis joining the party. He certainly looks at home on that first line in Carolina with those 12 shots in his last 3 games. Jarvis's time on ice is still somewhat limited. He kind of actually reminds me very much of Nino Niederreiter's situation from last year, where Niederreiter scored about a 50-point pace with some really nice hot runs, especially on the front end of the year. And in that run, Niederreiter was playing just 15 minutes a night. And on the second power play, like where Jarvis is now. And with Jarvis playing Monday, and it's looking like a tough week to stream in extra games, I don't see why not give him at least a 1-game tryout. I had my eye on him for my Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patrons Fantasy League team. That's the Cupful, kkupfl.com. I had my eye on Jarvis for a couple days, but I don't know what I was waiting for. Someone just grabbed him as I was ready to hit the add button, which is very unfortunate. So you might want to do the same. It, of course, depends on your league format. If Jarvis is going to get you enough games in your lineup this week to make you happy, because there's a lot of busy days this week, then I'd be happy to go along for the ride here with Jarvis. Keep in mind, Nino Niederreiter was rosterable for large swaths of last season. And obviously, I hope Jarvis is going to be even better. I at least hope that Jarvis can be as good. I think that's the reasonable expectation to set for Jarvis vis-a-vis Niederreiter. So as good as Niederreiter for starters would be great. And Jarvis is a nice guy to try amongst the usual guys in the free agency bin who are getting kind of stale at this point of the season, where you've probably given a lot of them a turn. And Jarvis is like, hey, there's this shiny new toy in the bin, so go for it. I would just make sure, if you're going with Jarvis, of course, keep a regular eye out using like our Game Day Line's Twitter account or Frozen Tool to see whether Jarvis is still playing on that top line in Carolina, because I think that's key to his relevance. But while he's there, for sure, go get him. Also, before I throw it back to you, Elon. Jarvis, believe it or not, is the only crossover guy, the only overlap between us and Stream Scheme this week. So if you haven't listened to Dave Betton's Stream Scheme yet, what are you waiting for? Check our show notes for a link straight to it.
Yeah, okay. Jarvis, I mean, think of it this way also. If you've missed out on Lucas Raymond and you've missed out on Dawson Mercer and you're thinking, man, I keep missing out on these rookies because I wait too long. We're telling you right now, he's only like 3% rostered on Yahoo. Like, go grab Seth Jarvis because he's on the top line. He's scoring goals. Maybe he'll cool off and you'll swap him away. Or maybe he'll continue to be awesome for the rest of the year and you'll be happy you grabbed him when you had the chance, okay? While we're here in Carolina, let's talk about a couple more hot canes, starting with Martin Necas. Oh, no, I don't want Ben and Lewis to get mad at me. More hot canes, starting with Martin Necas, who, after a slow start to the season, has been on fire lately. 8 points in his last 7 games, including a goal of his own versus the Kings yesterday. He's obviously not in as great of a spot as Jarvis. Necas has been playing with Stahl and Nino Niederreiter on Saturday, as well as on the second power play, but that hasn't stopped him from producing lately. Necas now sits at 10 points in 14 games on the season. That's a 59-point pace, pretty close to that 63-point pace that he put up last year. Brian, I'm curious to know, is this around where you expect him to land when it's all said and done, just kind of repeating what he did last year? Or are you seeing anything from this current hot run to indicate that maybe he's found another gear?
No, I think this is exactly where I expect Martin Necas to land. My advice has been from the start, because you've been asking about him because you traded for him, hold the course with Necas all year. And I'm glad he's not letting anyone down who's had that faith in him. I think Necas is still, like you're asking if he has another gear. He might. He's just not really going to have the chance to show it off because he still has not been able to infiltrate the top power play unit. But hey, 60 to 65 points is still very nice and a really nice thing to be able to expect from him. High 50s would be fine, but a touch disappointing. So I'm willing to say that he was still so snake bitten for the first bit of the season that he still hasn't made up for all of that yet. So I'm really excited that Necas appears to be on track.
Yeah, he had a really sweet goal in that last game. He's clearly very talented, but you're right, Brian. Of course, you need to have talent, and then you also need to get that deployment to really become a superstar in the league. And yeah, if you're not on the top power play, it's hard to get to be point per game unless you're obviously Nikolai Ehlers. Then another hot cane, Tony DeAngelo, right? Quietly outpacing that 2019-2020 breakout 64-point pace season, as DeAngelo has 15 points in 16 games so far. He's doing even better than that breakout year where we were talking about him all the time. And I feel like this might be the first time we've talked about him on the show. A lot of people were, of course, reticent to use draft capital on him for fear of him like not being able to stick with the team due to like behavioral concerns. But people who did decide to roll the dice on DeAngelo are loving life at the moment. He's pretty much producing game in, game out. Brian, if you had to bet, will DeAngelo end up setting a new career high point pace this year? The current mark to beat is 64. Do you think he's going to beat it? So far, he's on track to beat it.
Yeah, it's really it's exciting to see Tony DeAngelo, and what a bargain for Carolina to have found that. I mean, there's a reason Tony DeAngelo was a bargain because of all the history and attention that he's drawn to himself, but he's been very quiet this season everywhere but on the score sheet. And one thing that's helping DeAngelo is that Carolina is just wrecking other teams while DeAngelo is on the ice with a nearly 80% share of the goals scored at 5-on-5. That's ridiculous. Like, you expect a good line to have like a 55% share of the goals scored while they're on the ice. While DeAngelo's on the ice, I'm going to say it again, and 80% of all goals scored with DeAngelo on the ice come for Carolina. That's largely thanks to his 5-on-5 crew scoring at a crazy rate of 5 goals per 60 minutes. That's probably 150% of what you'd expect for most players who are playing on like above average top lines. So that's a way above what's already a pretty high bar. And that crazy high bar is being set because DeAngelo and his teammates are shooting 14% at even strength, which is great, but not sustainable. But looking at just DeAngelo and what he's contributing there at 5-on-5, he's scored on over 9% of his last 200 shots that have come since 2019-20. So DeAngelo is actually now starting to look like potentially one of these legit defenseman shooters who are poised to, like, he could be poised to enter this pretty exclusive group of blue liners who shoot above 8% while playing defense. It's rare to find, but maybe DeAngelo is entering that rarefied air. So everything is going really well, too well for DeAngelo at 5-on-5, but still very well, even when things are going to regress and pull back. And on the power play, DeAngelo's production is right in line with what he did in his big season, that big breakout with New York. Right now, DeAngelo's on a 77-point pace, and you're asking me, hey, his previous career high point pace was 64 points. Is he going to blow past that? I think D'Angelo has a shot at 70, but I think it's most likely he falls around that 65-point pace again. I think it's even odds whether or not D'Angelo surpasses his career high from the past. Like, don't start thinking he's a 75-plus point guy yet, but it's really exciting to at least see that he's reclaimed all that fancy value that was lost after last year when he started the season in the NHL and finished it out of the NHL.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that's pretty fair to say even odds on whether he'll be plus or minus 64. Either way, great value for anyone who drafted him. I have like a, happy and sad story for him. The happy news is in Cupful, he was someone that was put up first in the auction draft, and I got him. I paid maybe a bit too much at the time. It felt like 16, I think it was, but yeah, I ended up getting him, so that was great. On the downside, someone grabbed him or maybe had him in my Dynasty League, and this is a cap league, and he was signed for, like $1 million, and the person was like not someone who's not contending this year, and he like posted in the league chat, like, anyone want to, trade me for D'Angelo? I'm looking for like a pick. And I think I offered a second pick, and then he was like, I want a first. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it. Like, obviously that deal's off the table now. I definitely should have sent a first pick to get Tony D'Angelo. That would have been clutch. But, win some, you lose some. I guess since we're on Carolina still, hopefully people are enjoying the Carolina talk. They're a very interesting team. And on the flip side, let's talk about a player who's not doing as well as we'd have expected. And that's Tavo Taravinan. I'm wondering, Brian, should Taravinan managers be concerned? He's off the top line. Like I said, it's been Jarvis with Aho and Svechnikov. Taravinan's playing with like Trocheck. So good players, but not like necessarily as good as the top guys. And Taravinan is cold right now. He's pointless in 4 of his last 5 games. One of those games he had 2 points, but most of the nights over these past couple of weeks, he's been giving you nothing. He started hot, but is now down to a 60-point pace and falling. Is now like a time to try and trade for him? Like, if you think that this is just like a slow stretch, or would you feel more comfortable just leaving him alone and maybe you shouldn't expect too much? Because, you were talking about Nachas and how he can't get so high because he's not on the top power play. I guess with Taravinan, how high can he get if he's not playing with Aho or Svechnikov?
Exactly. And that's a big determinant for how successful Tavo Taravinan can be. Looking at just himself beyond his deployment, Taravinan looks a little worse this year. He's seeing fewer minutes at 5-on-5. I guess that is deployment related too. Taking fewer shots per 60. And, Taravinan's never been a terribly dangerous shooter. So it's not a big deal that he's taking fewer shots, but it is a problem now that Taravinan is not playing right now with a guy who can finish like Sebastian Aho. Meanwhile, I should also give Taravinan credit because he doesn't look as bad as his numbers are. He has not scored yet at 5-on-5, 0% shooting. His points participation is down half at 33%. And his on-ice shooting percentage, while D'Angelo's on the ice, seeing his teammates score on 14% of their shots, Taravinan's seeing success on just 6% of the shots taken while he's on the ice. So snake bitten there. And Taravinan's been between Aho and Trocheck so far this year as a centerman, with a turnstile of wingers taking the other side. But with Trocheck and not Aho, that's who Taravinan's been with for this cold snap. And I think that's one of the reasons Taravinan is pointless in 4 of 5. On one hand, I'm not encouraged by what I've seen from Taravinan so far this season. On the other hand, if you're ready to gamble that Taravinan is going to be back with Aho before long, honestly, I expect things to be roughly back to normal for him, and that would be a good buy low opportunity. But on the other hand, now we're at 3 hands. If you're ready to gamble that Taravinan is not going to be back with Aho and you're rostering him, I think this might be a good time to try and shuffle him away and off your roster in case he doesn't come back to Aho's line or find a way to bounce back with Trocheck. So I think with Aho, Taravinan is probably looking this year like a 65-point player, but without, the downside is there, like 55, give or take 5. Like, I could see Taravinan, if he doesn't click with Trocheck and whoever the other winger is, I could see it being a really tough season for him, and he might hang out in the 50-55 point range. We just haven't seen Taravinan play without Aho for a long while, but we know that he needs a finisher. And right now, the 2 best finishers in Carolina, Aho and Svechnikov, they're playing on the same line with Seth Jarvis. So long as that holds, I am worried about what Taravinan can bring to the table.
Yeah, so I guess it's all up to Rod Brindamore to decide whether or not Taravinan's going to be great or not. Because I think the upside's even higher than 65. Like, from the top line, top power play, he could be like a 70-point guy. But it all depends on the deployment. And right now, he's just not getting it. That third piece lately has been Jesper Fast playing with Trocheck and Taravinan. So that's not someone who's known to be a great finisher. Okay, so that's it for Carolina. For the next 3 hot streaks I want to discuss, they're all goalies, okay? And they're all goalies who I've had available to me personally at different points this season in Tier 1 of the Cupful. And now I need you, Brian, trying to tell me how much I should be kicking myself for having missed out on all of them because they're all, of course, not available anymore. Let's start in Washington, where at the blink of an eye, Ilya Samsonov has gone from a poorly performing backup to maybe the current starter on a hot run because he's had 2 straight shutouts versus LA and San Jose on Wednesday and Saturday. Before Wednesday, before that game, it was a late game, and we had our monthly patron cast, which is a show we do once a month where we answer all the questions from the patrons. This last one was especially long. We had a lot of great questions, but we did have a question from Chris asking us to rank Koskinen, Vanacek, Swayman, and Quick, and I recall talking about how Vanacek seems really desirable to me because he's been starting 2 of every 3 games. He's been doing all right. Samsonov's been bad, so I don't see a reason for Samsonov to take the job back. And then, of course, right after that, he got his first of 2 shutouts on the week. So now at this point, I guess Washington is playing once again today, and I don't think the game has started yet. Yeah, they're playing Seattle, so they're probably going to win, and probably because Seattle's terrible, right? So Vanacek might get a win, and then we'll have to go from there. But at this point, are we back to thinking that it's 50-50, or is it even like Samsonov's net? Because we thought that Samsonov was going to be the starter going into the year, right? Then he just did so badly, and Vanacek did so well that things flipped quickly. What's your current take on the Washington goalie situation and what you would do if you had either of these guys?
As we did talk about on the patron cast, which, sorry for another little plug in the middle of the app. I promise this will be the last one from me. But if you want to listen to the patron cast, it's just $5. You can just subscribe as a Patreon, patreon.com/KeepingKarlsson. We went over for 2.5 hours and covered this crazy range of questions and ideas specifically directed and requested by our patrons. So as we talked about on that patron cast, along with everything else, Samsonov and Vanacek, I said, I think it's a 50-50 split. I mean, it seemed like Samsonov's job to lose going into camp, and he kind of lost it because Vanacek was able to be really competitive in camp and then came out of the gate really strong. What we've seen from both Washington goalies is that they can go on runs, both good runs and bad ones, and I'm not confident yet that either one can hold the net for an extended period of time. And I also, from what I'm sensing from the Washington coaching staff, they don't seem to feel particularly strongly about helping one of Samsonov or Vanacek emerge over the other. Some teams have their favorites, but I don't think Washington has one yet. So, of course, Samsonov is the long-term option in Washington with the most upside, but has yet to deliver any kind of consistently good results. If he can do that, this can all change. But for now, I think it's going to be 50-50, but the edge in Washington always goes to the guy with the hot hand rather than other teams where they kind of blindly alternate between their goalies, regardless of who's playing well or not. So if you're looking for a goalie, Samsonov is the hot hand right now. And I'm curious to see how far he can run with this. I had him high on my draft list going into the season, as you mentioned, Elon, because the talent for Samsonov is supposedly there. And Vanacek isn't supposed to be someone who can keep the door shut on giving Samsonov an opportunity. So I think this could be a good chance to buy in and then just cut bait once he has a couple bad games and Vanacek takes the net again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? We have no idea what the future's going to hold. It's super hard to predict goalies, but definitely if before you saw Samsonov dropped in your fantasy league and you're like, I'm not interested in this guy, he barely plays, and when he plays, he's bad. Keep in mind, he's on a right now 120-minute shutout streak, and who knows how much longer it'll go, so you definitely want to get on that while you can. By the way, welcome back TJ Oshie to the Caps, right back to the top power play. We picked up a power play assist on Ovi's first period goal on Saturday. Somewhat surprisingly, though, Oshie bumped Tom Wilson from the top power play and not Conor Sherry. And Sherry actually also bumped Wilson from the top line mid-game on Saturday, and that was in a 2-goal outing for Sherry. So he scored a goal in the first period from the bottom 6, and then he scored another goal from line 1. So now we're looking at a potential line 1, power play 1, Conor Sherry, who has 5 points in his last 5 games going into his game today against Seattle, where, once again, I've said, he's probably going to get another point because Seattle goalies are terrible. We're actually going to talk about them a little bit later on the show. So, Brian, how appealing is Sherry in this spot with Ovi and Kuznetsov right now compared to, say, a Seth Jarvis, who's also, it's basically the same spot, though actually Sherry's on the top power play. Jarvis isn't, like you've mentioned. So if you had an option to pick one of those guys, putting schedule aside, who interests you more right now between Sherry and Jarvis?
I think I'm going to stick with Seth Jarvis. I mean, I do remember how great Conor Sherry was with Sidney Crosby way back when. He had that 70-point pace season and wasn't even seeing a lot of power play time. Like that was all 5-on-5 production. And the next year, Conor Sherry was like a hot commodity in drafts, still playing largely with Crosby, and followed up with a 30-point pace and followed that up with 30 to 35-point paces through Sherry's time in Buffalo, where he also did occasionally get turns on the top line, but has always looked like a guy who can't consistently capitalize on or hold these kinds of great deployment opportunities. Sherry's current run has come on the back of scoring 4 goals on 9 shots. Of course, that's not something that's going to hold. And frankly, I find it kind of weird that Sherry hasn't picked up an assist with the line mates he has as part of this run. So that's why I would prefer Jarvis between these two. Sherry's a fine option to try and ride in deeper leagues, but he's not the sort of type that I'd hold just because he's on the top line, top power play, because we've seen him be there and not produce before. So he's got to tick the actually producing box too.
Yeah, well, like I said, 5 points his last 5 games. I don't know. I'd love to have either of them. Neither of them are available to me in any of my leagues right now. I think you definitely need to take a good long look at Conor Sherry while he's there. Obviously, the coach likes him. It's not as if he's just defaulting his way onto the top line, right? Like Tom Wilson was supposed to be there and he got bumped. Tom Wilson could have also been on the top power play. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Brian. Like, it's a tough choice. They're both very appealing, but Sherry is definitely someone that I would have strongly on my radar if I had the option in any of my leagues. Obviously, I don't because I'm in tough leagues. And I guess since we're here in Washington, I'll also give a shout out to Garnett Hathaway, who had a run of 5 goals in 4 games before going pointless yesterday. But in that game on Saturday when he went pointless, he made up for it with 9 hits. So no chance that obviously Hathaway keeps up that scoring, but definitely someone to consider in your bangers and mash formats if he's going to give you hits and also has shown some scoring potential, which I never knew he had. So to be honest, if you would have asked me at the start of the week what team is Garnett Hathaway on, I might have had to think about it. But here we go. He's on the Caps. He's throwing hits and he scores some goals every once in a while. But okay, so I said I'm going to give you 3 goalie hot streaks. We started with Samsonov. Next, I want to discuss another disruptor to a goalie from Chris's question. Remember, Chris asked me to asked us to rank what was it? So I don't even have it here in front of me. Vanacek and Koskinen and then a couple other guys. And I want to talk about Stewart Skinner, who is currently taking a run at Koskinen's job, right? Skinner has gotten the last 2 Oilers starts after Koskinen got himself pulled versus the Jets on Tuesday. And Skinner's been amazing this week. He stopped 54 of 55 over his relief and then full appearance versus the Jets. And then he stopped 29 of 31 shots on Saturday in the 5-2 win over Chicago. Brian, is it Skinner time in Edmonton for the foreseeable future? Like, we never expected Koskinen to be the starter, right? We expected Mike Smith to be the sure starter because Koskinen's not that good. Then Smith got hurt. Koskinen had a bit of a good run, and so we're like, okay, I guess anyone who grabbed Koskinen, good job for you. I guess it's good for you, then you might want to hold on since Smith is going to be injured long term. But now Koskinen's been struggling a lot lately. Stuart Skinner, who did a great job in the AHL before getting called up, is now really seeming to find his game here in the NHL as well. So is this like another situation like with Washington where you're just going to kind of say it's probably 50-50, or do you think there's a really good chance that Skinner's just taken the job and is going to be able to run with it?
Well, let's frame the question here, because if it's not Skinner, then it's going to have to be Koskinen. And looking at Koskinen, he's now put up 4 consecutive sub 900 appearances, like sub 900 save percentage, which is not out of line for Koskinen in his career. He has about a 50% quality start percentage over the course of his career. So like flip a coin. And that's how likely it is that Mikko Koskinen is going to give you a quality start in the crease. I feel like Edmonton has no interest in going too deep into battle with Koskinen for any extended period of time, because essentially you're just bailing water when he's in your crease, or that's the way it's been lately anyway. So of course, when Smith was down, there were rumors that Edmonton was looking for outside help, but now maybe they have an inside man. It's Stuart Skinner, who was drafted 78th overall in the 3rd round back in 2013. Skinner's now 23 years old. He came out of junior to play in the ECHL with Wichita in 2018-19. And then over the course of the last couple years, Skinner has emerged as a starter with Edmonton's AHL affiliate in Bakersfield, where most recently Skinner put up a .914 save percentage in 31 games last season. So I think, why not? And I think every start that Skinner has, they should play a little like dinner bell sound right before he comes on the ice, like Skinner time. I think that would be really funny, just personally. Between Skinner and Samsonov, like I think that's a really interesting one. I I have a slight preference for Skinner, but it's purely a hunch. And that hunch is just based on his competition seems worse. Like, I think Vanacek is better than Koskinen. I don't know that Skinner is good enough to like hold on to a job over time. Like, he has this unknown upside, right? Where Samsonov, we feel like we know his upside, but we also know that he can't string together more than like 3 or 4 good starts at a time, if that. So Skinner's like the mystery box here. And with the worst competition, that's why I'm ever so slightly leaning to him. But if you want someone who's at least going to get 50% of the starts and hopefully more, then you're probably going to want to look at Samsonov if volume is really going to matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd probably go Skinner over Samsonov. Just I don't know, for fun. It's also just like Edmonton. It's like the goalie has a really good chance of winning almost every game because they score so many goals. And now if Skinner could actually keep doing what he's been doing, it could be a very tasty place to be. Okay, so since we're in Edmonton, let's talk about Darnell Nurse's broken finger. That will sideline him for 2 to 3 weeks. So that stinks for anyone who's had Nurse. He's been like fantastic. Anyone who drafted him high is not regretting it. Like, he's giving you everything that you would have hoped for. In his absence, Duncan Keith moved up to the top pairing with Bouchard, and 2019 8th overall pick Philip Broberg was called up and played his first ever game on Saturday, and he picked up an assist in 14 minutes and a half of ice time. It'll be really fun, I think, over the next few years watching Broberg. It'll be really fun over the next few years watching Broberg versus watching Broberg versus Bouchard, like, just to see like who's going to emerge as like the top defenseman there. Obviously right now Bouchard has the edge, but he has more experience. Interestingly, or maybe not, maybe it's obvious, but Tyson Barrie didn't like move up the depth chart at all just because of this glaring hole in Nurse's absence. Tippett left Barrie on the third pairing and gave him under 14 minutes of even strength time on ice in the last game. But hey, Barrie still is on that top power play. He scored a power play goal on Saturday, but that broke a 6-game pointless streak. And in my opinion, after a game where Barrie scores a goal, at this point, I think I'd be trying to shop him and try to get like a really good return. Like, don't give him away for nothing. But to me, like, just like I said like a few episodes ago, like, I'm nervous about Barrie. Like, last season when he had this like 70-point pace season, he was getting a decent amount of even strength time, right? Like, he had 48 points in 56 games, 23 on the power play, but that also left him with 25 at even strength. And so far this season, he has only 5 even strength points in 17 games and none in his past 7 games, with his even strength time declining. So Brian, are you with me that Barry's a good guy to try to sell, especially, if you could hold him for one more game? Let's say he scores like again, scores 2 games in a row. I just feel like, obviously, I'd want to get a sweet return for him, but I'd also be very nervous to hold him just because, just a power play guy could only be so valuable to you, like, even if he has 30 power play points, that's still only 30 points. And if he adds another 10 even strength points, I don't know really if you end up anywhere that special.
This is the Keith Yandel, right, situation. And we've talked about the danger of Barrie getting Yandled. And by the way, just to like go over exactly why Broberg got the bump and not Barrie. First off, and the basic reason is that Barrie plays on the right side and Broberg plays on the left. But also, even if Barrie did play on the left, I wouldn't have expected him to move up because he does nothing near what Darnell Nurse can do defensively. And Edmonton would be in big trouble, I think, if they let Tyson Barrie try. And if you look at the left side in Edmonton, man, like, it is sparse behind Darnell Nurse. You've got Broberg, who's taken the job. The other guys who can play on the left side, Chris Russell, Duncan Keith, and William Lagesson. And then you look on the right side, and it's actually not that better. You've got Evan Bouchard, solid option, then Tyson Barrie and Cody Ceci. So a lot of third pairing defensemen all over that Edmonton depth chart. And for their sake, they better hope that Philip Broberg is up to the task to doing some version of what Darnell Nurse can do. But I know you're asking about Tyson Barrie, and I am with you. I mean, it's a little different than the Keith Yandel situation, just because Barrie is on a power play that routinely scores 1 or 2 goals a night, so long as they get 3 or 4 chances to do it. Like, the Edmonton power play right now, clicking at a 40% conversion rate, which isn't going to hold, but it could conceivably hold because that's how talented it is. So Barry's on this like supercharged, overpowered top power play unit, and that might be his only role, which makes him closer to being worth rostering, even if that is his only role, than someone like Keith Yandel. But I agree, it's tricky to own a third pairing defenseman whose only reason to roster is having that top power play deployment. So it might be a good time to go fishing for offers if you do have Tyson Barrie and he does get on a run, and see what you can pull back.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying he's not like worth rostering. Like I wouldn't be recommending for people to drop Tyson Barrie because he does have that potential to score a point every single night because of that power play, like you said. I'm just saying if you could pull like a really nice return for him, go get Elias Pettersson or something who's on a cold streak. We'll actually talk about him in a little bit later. If you could get a really big fish in return, I think now would be a good time to try to do it after he scored a point.
And for the record, Ricky in the chat got Pettersson for Tyson Barrie. So looks pretty good. That's a great. Try it in your leagues. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah, or wait till we talk about Pettersson a little bit because I'm going to maybe throw some cold water just like Ben and Lewis have on some recent Short Shifts episodes. And I guess also on Edmonton, let's talk about another cold streak here, and that's Jesse Puljujarvi. Where's this guy gone? Okay, he started the season with 14 points in his first 13 games. We were talking about him as like one of the biggest draft steals that people got, but now he's pointless in his last 4 games. Brian, is this just a random cold stretch, nothing to worry about, or is it something that you think people should be concerned about for Jesse?
I don't think anyone needs to be too concerned about Puljujarvi's cold stretch. You look at what's happening in Edmonton. Not as many goals have been scored with Puljujarvi on the ice in this stretch. And unfortunately, he hasn't gotten in on any of the goals that have been scored. I think 3 in the last 5 games at 5-on-5 while Puljujarvi's on the ice. In fact, if you look at it this way, Edmonton in their first 10 games was limited to 2 goals just 1 time. But over their last 7, Edmonton has scored 2 goals or fewer in 4 of their last 7. And I think that's all we're seeing happen here. Like Puljujarvi's time on ice is still holding. He's still playing with McDavid every night. I think he's, of course, susceptible to this happening. But honestly, it's no big deal. If I'm rostering Puljujarvi, you had some fat times. Now they're followed by some lean times, and they'll be followed by some fat times again. Obviously, I don't know what you were thinking, Elon. I wasn't thinking Puljujarvi was going to pace for 82 points, even with that early run. Times like this are going to happen. And I think, especially for someone who's going to still play with McDavid the rest of the way, I think that's a fair trade-off for what you're going to get. I have Puljujarvi slated for about 65 points, give or take 5. Of course, so long as he sticks with McDavid, but that's the pace I would expect the rest of the season, which might help you to know if you're trying to calm yourself after seeing him go cold over the last few games.
Yeah, as long as you're saying that deployment looks the same, like his time on ice, like it's just he happens to be on the ice for fewer goals and not getting in as many goals, then I'm with you. Like probably nothing to worry about. It's too bad. Here's an idea for a fantasy hockey platform feature. You're talking about the fat times and the lean times. What if you could be like a squirrel and like stow away some points that you don't need right now? Like let's say you could like sort of roster Puljujarvi during the good times and be like, all the points that I get today from him, I want to save that for my next matchup. But maybe you have to decide in advance. I don't know. That might be something fun to play with one time. I also threw another crazy idea of a fantasy feature on the Discord recently that, Brian, you just responded saying this is crazy, but I thought it was a good idea. It was like, what if you can like add and drop and move players in and out of roster spots like during the game? Like how fun would that be if like midway through a game, if a player's not playing well, you can take him out and put in someone who is playing well that you had on your bench. And obviously you would need to have a rule to make sure you can't put more than like 60 minutes of game time in a spot. Like you can't just play like an East Coast player and then drop him for the West Coast player. But anyways, I think there's something there, especially for goalies. That would be a lot of fun if you could pull your goalie midway through the game if they're doing badly. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. I said that I was going to give you 3 goalie hot starts. So here's the last one in the trilogy, and that's Jake Edinger on Dallas, who got called up with Holtby nursing a minor injury, and he's crushed it in his 2 starts. He stopped 28 of 30 versus Detroit, and then 35 out of 36 shots yesterday in the 4-1 win over St. Louis. We've discussed how complicated the whole situation in Dallas is with Hudobin and Holtby is. But with Hudobin and Holtby like struggling of late and Bishop still stuck in whatever cone of silence he's in, it's becoming extremely apparent, at least to me, that Edinger is like their best goalie. And I think that they know it. Like I think Rick Bowness knows that if he wants his best chance at winning a game, it's to put Jake Edinger in the net. So you'd think that at some point they're just going to have to figure it out. On one hand, like you might say that, oh, I don't want to add Edinger because as soon as Holtby's healthy, they're going to have to send him back down to the minors. But on the other hand, it's like, can they really justify to their fans to send down their clear best goalie, at least in my opinion? So I'm curious to hear what you think. If he's available in free agency in your league, like I think you should add him right now because I just have this hunch that Dallas is going to figure out a way to keep him on the team. And I think once they do that, I think he's the starter and I think he's going to do really well.
I've done it and you should do it too. Go, like I'd pause the pod and go grab Jake Edinger. He's seen limited time, but he's looked really good. And it's a small enough sample that we're not convinced and we're still open to everything going awry, but still just go get him because there's a decent chance this all works out for Edinger, especially because, his save percentage is good. He's badly outperforming. So I should say goodly outperforming his expected save percentage too. Remember our preseason take on Edinger, which is that the net should be his, but the Stars crease is inexplicably crowded. And this is Edinger's chance to force their hand and say, like, despite all their best efforts to not give him a shot for some reason, he's got a shot and he's going to take advantage of it. Like, I was thrilled. I mean, I feel bad for Anton Khudobin. I'm sure he wasn't happy with that bad start he had after Edinger's first start, but that just opened the door even wider for Edinger to stroll through and show what he can do. And now I'm like, Dallas should figure out how long can they like keep Holtby like a scratch, and Bishop, like, can they keep him on IR for a little while longer? No one will know because no one can ask him. But I really don't know what Dallas's plan is here. But the plan, I think, is in the crease right now. Jake Edinger. Dallas hasn't had a reason to be this excited for a goalie since drafting Jack Campbell 11th overall back in 2010. And now Edinger, the 22-year-old they picked 26th overall in 2017, he's their next hope in the crease. And let's hope that the Stars can follow the course better with him, ideally beginning now. I think he's already legit the top option of the three healthy or like slightly unhealthy and Holtby goalies in their crease. And in a season that Dallas is fighting to save, I hope Edinger plays so well they can't send him anywhere but back into the crease night after night. And I would go add him to your team right now in case he does just that.
Yeah, man. Regrets. I have a bunch. They're all about these goalies that we've been talking about.
That's exactly the saying.
I altered it a little bit. Okay, since we're on Dallas, John Klingberg continues to struggle. No points in his last 3 games. Only 3 points in 12 games on the season now. He's getting lapped by guys who on his team that were supposed to be like depth D. Like Ryan Suter has 6 points in his last 7 games now. Esa Lindell has gotten hot lately. He had 2 assists versus St. Louis on Saturday, extending his point streak to 3 games. Brian, are you still holding steadfast in your opinion that Klingberg is a hold and someone to jump on if he's dropped? Like, I think we've seen questions on our Discord where people have asked, like, Klingberg was dropped, should I add him? And I've seen you, right, like, yeah, definitely go grab him, and for good reason. Like, he was so great last year. But like, is it time that we need to start changing our mind, or is this going to be like a Chikrin situation where as soon as I come on a pod and say I'm kind of over this guy, he's going to start getting hot right away?
Let's hope so, right, Team Klingberg? I think maybe this season, I've said this already, is looking more like a 50-point campaign rather than the upside from Klingberg that we'd like, which is 55, 60 points. But you look at his numbers, Elon, and I'm still like not convinced this has to be a lost season for Klingberg, and that there's reason to roster him. He still has no goals on 22 shots at 5-on-5. He has no secondary assists at 5-on-5. He has no power play points at all. None of this is sustainable for Klingberg. This is unsustainably bad. But I also know, like, aren't we all so sick and tired of holding underperforming Dallas Stars? So I get it. And if you want to let him go until things get going and you think he's going to safely stay in free agency and defensemen are easy to come by, go for it. You have my blessing. If he's already in free agency and no one's touching him, fine. You don't have to rush to grab him. But I still feel pretty strongly that in 10 or 20 games from now, it's going to be a situation where if you didn't get him when you had the chance, you might be at least a little sorry. Like, you might not be crushed you didn't get him, but I think you might be a little sorry you didn't get him. So, like, you could play dangerously and swap Klingberg out for Suter or Esa Lindell, but, like, I personally wouldn't. Would you?
No, I guess I'd hold on, but it would be frustrating, right? But, you talked about how people might be tired of holding on to slumping Stars. The people who held on to slumping Rupe Hintz, or should I say Rope Hintz, as Ben and Lewis discussed in the last short shifts, the people who held on to slumping Rope are very happy right now. He has 7 points in his last 6 games, so hopefully Klingberg will do the same, but I don't know. He's not on the top power play, right? Like, most teams, you don't hold the top power play defenseman like as if they're gold and expect 50 points. So he's just like, he's based on some great history, and I think he'll not be nothing. But I think even this like 50 points that you're saying would be like really nice for someone who's not getting more than 50% of the power play time.
True. But he just needs something to have it. Like, no power play points is not the way. And I still think he can work himself back up to being like the top power play defenseman, although it does look like Dallas is pretty committed to not really having a top power play defenseman, which is why I said, like, I'm not looking at the highest upside, like the high end of his upside, but I am still hoping that he can hit 50, even 45. I still think he's a worthwhile guy. There's a lot of leagues where you can't get a 45 point defenseman just like that. So I grant that he doesn't look as good as I wish he did, but I still think that there will come a point where he's rosterable. But
Yeah.
also, Grant, as I said, like I hate Dallas. What a frustrating team.
I mean, hey, not for me right now. I grabbed Jamie Benn a long while back when someone else got frustrated and dropped him. He has 5 goals in his last 7 games
That's
or something.
so
He's been
weird.
amazing. I love him.
Yeah.
Didn't I say on the show at the beginning of the year that Jamie Benn's going to have a huge resurgence season? I feel like I must have said that. No, I definitely said the opposite. By the way, Miro Haskinen's cold right now. 1 point in his last 4 games for what it's worth. But anyway, all right, that's it for these goalies. Actually, I'll give you a bonus goalie, but just in a sec. Okay, we're going to go do a quick ad break to, let our sponsors try to tell you some reasons why they think you should buy their products. So then we're going to have that. Then I'm going to give you a bonus goalie hot streak. Then we're going to play Keeping Karlsson Would You Rather. So we're going to be back with all that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back for the second half of the show, or maybe the last 2/3 of the show. We'll see how long it takes us to get through all of this, but I can't stop, okay? If you think the show is a bit long, it's because I just want to give you everything that I can, but I think that I need Brian's opinions, right? And I want to do one bonus goalie hot streak, and that's over in St. Louis, the team that Dallas beat on Saturday. And specifically, the goalie that Dallas beat was Jordan Binnington, who's been really struggling as of late, right? His loss to Dallas yesterday was his 4th non-quality start in a row, according to Frozen Tools. He's led in 3+ goals in 5 of his last 6 games. He's just not helping you if you have him on your fantasy team. Meanwhile, Ville Husso was on the COVID list for most of the year. He had a shutout. It was amazing. Then went on the COVID list, and then he finally came off, and he shined in his start versus San Jose on Thursday. He stopped 26 of 27 in a 4-1 win. And I even saw a quote from Coach Berube basically saying, here's the quote. It was a tweet by Jeremy Rutherford. He said, "It's important that both goalies play well. When we have success, that's what we have going on. So Binner will get a break, work on some things, get a breather, and hopefully Husso can hold the fort for us." So I don't know. What that means to me is, I'm not saying that, I'm expecting Husso to take over as a volume starter or anything, but I think that Husso's going to get some games, especially with how well he's been doing and how badly Binnington has been doing. So, I don't want to, panic people too much and say it's time to drop Binnington. I wouldn't recommend that. But at the same time, at least for the short term, Ville Husso is looking super appealing at the moment.
Yeah, super appealing might be a stretch. Husso has looked really good in limited action this year, and I just waxed poetic for Jake Edinger, who pretty much has played as well in a similarly low sample size. But Edinger doesn't have the same history Husso does, which is Husso last year looking not good at all in 34 games of action. Husso was a guy once upon a time that we saw as an heir apparent to the crease in St. Louis, and then Binnington came along, just leapfrogged him. And there's been no looking back. And Husso has never really even met his own potential, let alone been someone to compete with Binnington on a regular basis. And I also think, I know Binnington's been cool lately, but he's looked good this season on the whole. Sorry, just one sec. In preseason, I shared why I still think in Smart Goalies Board, why Binnington should still be a solid fantasy option to roster, because he is actually a good goalie. But this season, I think his struggles have been on the penalty kill, and that's hurt his overall numbers. And I'm hoping he can improve there, because the penalty kill can be quite random for goalies. I believe Craig Berube when he says that maybe every so often Husso's going to start a couple in a row, especially if he's winning. But I really, like you said, super excited about Husso. I'm not. I don't think this signals anything longer term about Binnington, about imminently losing his clear number 1 status. Sure, I'm glad you're bringing it up. Let's keep an eye on things. But if I'm a Binnington manager, I am not. I'm not alarmed yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a little bit alarmed for next week, I think Husso might get a couple of the 4 games when maybe normally you'd expect Binnington to get 3 of them. But yeah, I think long term, obviously the plan is for Binnington to be the starter, but also I'd grab Husso. Maybe wait until he's announced to be the starter the next time he's going to play, but he's on a hot run, right? So grab Husso when you could spot start him, and who knows, if he has a good game, maybe they give him a second one in a row to see if he can keep it up. But again, that's a very short term play. All right, Brian, now to play the much heralded, and I'm just saying that, I don't know if it's true, but I'm excited at least to play Would You Rather with you. So I'm going to do some dueling hot streaks and cold streaks, and then you'll say who you'd rather have. And to start it off, I'm going to do a hot streak versus 3 cold streaks on the same team with a higher level of like, it would be surprising if you took that player, but that's the way it's going to be. I'm going to do Troy Terry versus the Canucks. Okay, so on the hot side, you know I have to do it. Troy Terry continues to get points every single game. His point streak is now at 16 games in a row. He has 22 points in that span. I don't need to give you any more deals. Everyone, we've been talking about it every week, right? Troy Terry is the talk of the league. Only Connor McDavid has a point streak right now as long as Troy Terry, and they're in a battle to see who's going to lose it first. So on the other side, we've got the Canucks. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go from like the lowest level of surprise to the highest level of surprise. So first of all, Brian, Bo Horvat. Pointless in 6 games, only 10 points in 18 games on the season. That's like a 46-point pace. So would you rather I don't know, should I do one at a time or should I say I'll just say all 3, okay? Then you could go in order. But like, if you say that you'd rather have Troy Terry than Bo Horvat, then I'm going to raise you and say, okay, in that case, would you rather have Troy Terry or Brock Besser, who is pointless in 5 games himself, only 8 points in 18 games on the season. So barely above a half point per game. And then if you say, yeah, you'll take Troy Terry over Brock Besser, then I'll just have to ask you, we'll have to go for gold here. Troy Terry or Elias Pettersson, because Pettersson has been like a bust so far. He has only 1 assist in his last 5 games, only 10 points in 18 games on the year. That's less than a 50-point pace. So Troy Terry versus Horvat, then Besser, then Pettersson. Who would you rather have?
I love this. Like, this is a classic Elon edition of Would You Rather. Like, first, it's like, would you rather Troy Terry? And then like, oh no, I'll present the other options. Okay, would you rather Troy Terry or any of these 3 other? Usually it's just 2, but I love it, and I will happily indulge in this triple would you rather scenario. So you're asking me about Troy Terry versus 3 Vancouver Canucks. As a whole, let's just make a sad face about what's happening in Vancouver. They are like a little bit unlucky. They're shooting less than 7% at 5-on-5, but Vancouver has also been one of the worst teams at 5-on-5s this year in generating quality opportunities. And they're in this tailspin right now that's been well documented. We don't need to go into it. I was trying to think of like a good analogy of another time I've seen a team in this bad a tailspin. I'm wondering if it's even not quite as bad as the Buffalo losing streak last year, because that was kind of expected in Buffalo. I'm wondering if maybe a good an analog for what's happening in Vancouver is like this slow start for Toronto this year when the sky was falling and Marner needed to be traded, except this is going on longer, and longer as in like 6 or 7 years, potentially. Anyway, what's happening in Vancouver is going to impact everyone. And I'll start with Pettersson, who at 5-on-5 has some like poor variance. His points participation is half of what it should be. He's generally a 15 to 20% shooter. He's yet to score on 19 shots at 5-on-5. And while he's on the ice, Vancouver's only scoring on 5.5% of the shots they take. And all of that has added up to just 2 points at 5-on-5 so far this season for Elias Pettersson, which is awful. Thank goodness he's got those 6 power play points to save his totals. But it has been ugly for Pettersson. And there's some signs of concern under the hood just about where he's shooting from and how often he's shooting. So I would still prefer Pettersson to Terry. Brock Besser, he's been on the ice for exactly 3 goals at 5-on-5 this year through 15 games. And to Besser's credit, he's picked up a point on 2 of those goals. He scored one of them and had the primary assist on the other. But there just hasn't been a lot to work with while he's on the ice. He and his teammates are shooting 3.5% at 5-on-5. And Besser, unlike Pettersson, is missing that power play production. He has only 2 power play points on the 6 power play goals he's been on the ice for. So that's also low participation for Besser. But his own numbers, unlike Pettersson, he looks okay. This is just a lot of really bad variance. And then Bo Horvat has a 6% on ice shooting percentage, but he hasn't missed a beat at 5-on-5 with the way he's scoring there. But he has only 2 power play points, including a goal on 13 power play shots, which is like a third of what we'd expect him to score if we were to regress him to his usual 20% power play shooting percentage. And Horvat, like Besser, also still looks pretty good in his own number. Okay, so that's Pettersson, Besser, and Horvat, like they all have room for variance to get them back on track. But I do have some real concern for Pettersson, who looks a little lost out there. Just some short-term concern. I mean, it was kind of a messy preseason with his contract hassles, and I wonder if this is actually a really good time to shoot for him in a keeper or dynasty where you don't have to worry about the short term and you can just look and get excited about the long term with Pettersson, because in the short term things just aren't great, and I think they'll turn around at some point. I'm just not sure when. Comparing them all to Troy Terry, I think Troy Terry can keep up with Horvat. I think Troy Terry can possibly keep up with Besser. And right now, I would rather have Troy Terry than Elias Pettersson, but I don't think I'm going to be saying that at, say, the game 40 or 50 game mark of the season. So there's the would you rather. How did I do?
I think that's fair, right? Like, I think it's so hard to predict, right? Like, Troy Terry is just like completely different player than we've ever seen him be so far. And he is like seemingly the go-to guy on Anaheim. So it's like in a similar spot as Pettersson is on Vancouver. But of course, we've seen from Pettersson like so many seasons now of like this like super high-end elite potential. So yeah, I think it would be too hard for me to give up Pettersson for Terry. But yeah, with the other two at this point, yeah, maybe I'll just take the safe bet and Terry, who's good. And then, yeah, maybe in 40, 50 games you regret it, but hopefully by then you got a lot of wins in the meantime. Too bad you can't like short a stock, you know, like in stock, you could like, if you expect a stock to like go down at some point, you could like short. I wonder if like you could do that with like a Troy Terry, though I guess at that point that you're like kind of betting against him, which I think we're at a point where we don't want to do too hard because he just keeps on putting up points. So I think, all right, hopefully that was helpful. I enjoyed that very much. So let's go. I'm going to try to jump around also in terms of like percent rostered for these would you rather decisions. So obviously these are high end guys that for some people, they just like are unavailable in all leagues unless you want to consider trying to make a trade. Let's go like to the very other end, two players who might be available, but sticking on Anaheim, we got to talk about Hampus Lindholm, who I don't know if people have noticed, but he's taken over for Jamie Drysdale's power play time on ice lately. Drysdale's gotten no power play time at all in his last 3 games, and Hampus Lindholm has been on that unit. It's like Fowler and Shattenkirk on one power play, and then Hampus Lindholm on the other. So first of all, Jamie Drysdale, to me, complete snoozer in 1-year leagues, like for as long as this lasts. The only like even when he was cold, I was still kind of interested in him just because he was getting a lot of power play time. That's all gone. So, you know, I would just, you know, drop him and then maybe consider adding him back if something changes. In the meantime, how about Hampus Lindholm? Seems like he's taking advantage. He has 3 points in his last 4 games, including a power play assist. So I'm going to put my would you rather of Hampus Lindholm versus another top power play guy who is super cold in Rasmus Andersson. Only 1 assist in his last 8 games going into today, despite quarterbacking what should be like a really strong top power play. Though I do see that Calgary is playing Boston right now. They're in the 3rd period, and Hampus Lindholm, and Rasmus Andersson does have an assist at even strength from a Noah Hannafin goal. Almost a schmoll, but Matthew Tkachuk was there with another assist. So, Brian, who would you rather have at this point? The cold Rasmus Andersson, who's maybe slightly less cold after an assist today, or the much hotter, but also normally not relevant at all, Hampus Lindholm?
I would rather have Hampus Lindholm. We like Hampus Lindholm. We always have, and I have a feeling we always will. Maybe I should say I feel like I've always been a pretty big Hampus Lindholm fan, even going back to...
I feel like I've been more like, I just don't think about him at all.
Well, that's how it's been for the last couple of years, but there were several years, including his time in Carolina, where I thought about Hampus Lindholm a lot, and I wanted such good things for him. He's been a good short-term play before, and I mean like before. It's been a while since he's gotten a fantasy relevant look because he's been in Anaheim, hasn't been on the top power play, but now Anaheim is a good place to be, and he's getting on the top power play. Interesting that he's getting on the top power play ahead of Cam Fowler as the next option after Drysdale, although maybe it's not so surprising because Fowler's never been great there and has never really been challenged.
Well, so if I could interrupt for a second, I'll just say that like Fowler and Shattenkirk have been on the other power play together and they've been really doing well. So it might just be a matter of not wanting to break up something that's working.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe Hampus Lindholm will be short-lived on the top unit. It could be fun, though. I'm interested in Lindholm getting a turn on what's the 4th ranked power play in the NHL, although that is, like you said, largely thanks to the unit that has Shattenkirk on it. But why not take a spin? Because Rasmus Andersson just does not turn my crank. I've never really been bought into holding Andersson for any substantial stretch of time. It doesn't take much for me to want a guy over him. So I will go Hampus Lindholm, but I could see both of them just being back in free agency. in, I don't know, 1 to 2 weeks time, if not less.
Yeah, at any time, Drysdale could take that spot back because he is the heir apparent eventually. By the way, let me just give a quick injury update here. I think I jinxed Conor Sherry when I said he's like for sure going to get a point tonight against Seattle. Turns out he's injured and he's not even going to play. So he's day-to-day with an upper body injury, according to Caps PR. Thanks, Shams, for letting us know in the chat here. So, yeah, I guess all of our talk about Conor Sherry, I'm still into him, but not if he's injured. So hopefully he's come back soon.
I also need to, I misspoke. I was getting so excited about Hampus Lindholm that I said he played for Carolina. He didn't. That was Elias Lindholm.
Yeah. Hampus has been on Anaheim the whole time.
Yeah.
All right. So next, would you rather? I want to compare a hot player on Tampa Bay versus a very cold player on Minnesota that we talk about far too much. But we just got a tweet today saying that, I guess, just like the sky is blue and the grass is green, Keeping Karlsson is getting it wrong about Kevin Fiala. So Fiala is the cold streak here. He continues to struggle. Only 2 assists in his last 5 games going into today. And I believe that this Minnesota game is now over. It was actually Tampa Bay against Minnesota, so that's convenient. So Fiala had, a goal and an assist. All right, scrap the whole segment. So it was weird also because the reason why I brought Fiala up was I wasn't really planning to, but then I saw that there was this weird thing where on Saturday's game, Fiala didn't even get power play time, like not on power play 1 or power play 2. And I was like, what is going on? Like, should we be even more concerned that just Coach Eveson really hates him? But I guess today he did get back on a power play. Let's see, were these? He had a goal and he had an assist. Neither of them on the power play, but he did get power play time, so that's good. Anyways, let's finish the exercise. I want to compare him to another player who's doing really well. That's Alex Killorn, who's on a run of 14 points in his last 12 games from his line with Stamkos and Matthew Joseph. And then so today, Killorn, I'll bet you he got a point. Tampa Bay scored 4 times, and Killorn, this is exciting podcasting, 1 assist. There you go. Keeps the streak alive. So yeah, he's just been really great. I know at one point earlier in the season, Brian, you were saying how you don't expect Killorn to keep it up, and why should he, right? He was even off the top power play for a bit. Now with Braden Point injured, which is kind of new breaking news and probably the real story here in Tampa Bay. Sucks for them, by the way, because they're already down Kucherov. Now you're down Point. All you need to do is lose Palat and you lose your whole top line from the playoff run last year. Good thing they still have Stamkos. Hopefully I'm not jinxing him. Anyway, they still won today, so look at that. But yeah, so Killorn's obviously going to get that top power play. Now opportunity, I don't know how great it is now that Point isn't there. But yeah, so Killorn's doing great. Fiala was struggling, did have a good game today. Who would you rather have between the two moving forward?
Well, this will come as no surprise because what was it? The water is blue.
I don't know. I just made this up. I don't think I exactly quoted the tweet correctly, but they were basically saying that we're wrong about Fiala a lot. It was at Cy Butterfree saying death and taxes and Elon being wrong about Fiala. Also, why is it Brian's the one who's a beauty, and then it's Elon being wrong about Fiala? I think Brian loves Fiala more than me.
I think I do, actually. So unless it's Fiala is going to prove you wrong for doubting him and prove me right for having faith in him. Everybody knows I'm a big Kevin Fiala fan. He had some snark for his coach on Saturday night about his deployment. There's a post-game quote posted by Michael Russo, who was like someone asked him why he's not getting better deployment, top line or top power play. And he's like, I don't know. The coach hasn't told me. And I don't love what's going on in Minnesota with Fiala. I don't know what the deal is either. He was a top prospect when Nashville drafted him and never got a crack there. And then Paul Fenton, remember he got a job with Minnesota, set the whole franchise on fire. But the one thing he did do was acquire Kevin Fiala. And it's really weird that the only guy that's ever gone to bat for Kevin Fiala is persona non grata with any NHL front office. So very strange situation overall. I still believe, how can I not? And I'd rather him than Killorn, who let's give Killorn credit. Incredible what he's done before tonight's game. Killorn had 16 points in 17 games, and only one of those 16 points came on the power play. So it's all even strength production. Alex Killorn is one of the top even strength producers in the NHL this year, from not a very exciting line. And what Killorn is doing is he's riding some very high percentages, and there's nothing meaningful looking to have changed about Killorn's game, which is why I would still prefer Fiala, because there's nothing that either seems to have changed about Fiala's game, but Fiala's game has been awesome in the past and Killorn's has been So I would still rather Kevin Fiala.
Okay. I guess I'll agree, but I don't know. Like, it's getting very close. Like, Killorn is like really doing well. By the way, the lines have changed, right? So with this point injury, I said that Killorn was playing with Stamkos. So today it was Killorn with Matthew Joseph and Anthony Cirelli, and then Stamkos with Palat and Alex Barry-Boulet, who was called up from the minors. So Barry-Boulet is once again someone to watch. Killorn was on the top power play with Stamkos, Palat, Cirelli, and of course Victor Hedman. So that's the situation. But yeah, I guess like obviously Fiala has the higher upside based on what we saw at the end of last year. But Killorn seems like a very steady, safe. Like, I think Killorn, like, you could lock him in for like 60-ish points, maybe even 65 points, while Fiala's going to have like cold runs where he's like not producing, but then also the potential for like a really super hot run. And I love the shots on goal. So that's what's going to put Fiala over the edge for me. So I'll agree with you, Brian. How can I not agree with you? You're obviously the fantasy hockey robot for a reason. By the way, Jared Spurgeon is injured. By the way, Jared Spurgeon is injured on the Wild, so that has given Jonas Brodin some power play time. He's not exactly like capitalizing like, I don't know why I'm struggling, like Hampus Lindholm has, but I don't know. If you're in a super deep league and you want some D, you can go for Brodin, though really like the top D man lately for Minnesota has been Alex Goligoski, the ageless Alex Goligoski, who I remember discussing in like season 1 of Keeping Karlsson. We used to talk about him and how he's like a really solid producer on, what team was he on? Like, was it Dallas? I don't know. You have to go back to see what team Goligoski was on back. Yeah, it was Dallas. Yeah, and he had like a 41 points in 81 game season. I remember I used to use him as my example of value over replacement, where it was like a 60-point forward, or do you grab like, you know, Alex Goligoski in the draft, who like is 20 points less, but compare him to replacement defenseman versus replacement forwards. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Goligoski had 2 assists today versus Tampa, had an assist versus Florida yesterday. On Thursday, he had a goal and 2 assists versus Dallas. Like, this guy just keeps putting up points. I don't know if he's going to keep it up, but for as long as he does, I think I'd take him over Jonas Brodin. And by the way, Goligoski also got a decent amount of power play time today on a power play with him and Matt Dumba, which I guess technically you'd expect to be the second power play because it was also with Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman, and Frederick Gaudreau. But that unit actually got more time just by a little bit over like Zuccarello, Fiala, Kaprizov, Ek, and Brodin. So I'm just throwing a bunch of names at you. I don't really have a question, Brian, but just interesting to see what's going on in the Minnesota D.
Yeah, I think that's just a hiccup that ice time, you know, just one line was on for longer. You know, Brodin, like, I don't know. If you're trying to chase a Minnesota power play quarterback, it reminds me of the Islanders, where it's been a long time since we've seen worthwhile blue line production coming from the point in Minnesota. Like, I always have time for at least a look at a top power play quarterback, but there's not much pedigree or track record here to suggest that Jonas Brodin is going to be great in this spot. Honestly, I should probably like downgrade my excitement for Lindholm earlier too, because I probably think of them pretty similarly at the end of the day. I'm with you. I think I'd go Goligoski over Brodin. By the way, I feel like Goligoski is like the defensive version of Alex Killorn, just like by how long they've been around for and how they're like always these like contributors on the periphery and sometimes get hot. And I also, I'm glad, like, you bringing up that Goligoski used to be with Dallas. It was like a trip down memory lane. I don't know if you remember, but Goligoski started his career with Pittsburgh, and he was traded. Do you remember who he was traded for?
Dallas and Pittsburgh. Is James Neal involved here?
James Neal and Matt Niskanen.
Huh.
Yeah, so there was that trade and another straight up defense trade. It was the Avalanche trading Kevin Shattenkirk to St. Louis for Eric Johnson. Those are like 2 like almost straight up trades that happened, I think, around a similar time that I feel like still like had a big impact on all those guys' careers and those teams. Anyway, just fun to remember some trades.
Right now, actually, Matt Niskanen is kind of like my ops. I don't really like him because I drafted him late in my Dynasty League, like first year draft a couple years ago. And then after I drafted him, he announced his retirement. And I was like, come on, you were supposed to be like a solid depth D for me over on Washington. Why'd you have to retire? Why couldn't you have let us know a little bit earlier? Pulled Corey Crawford there. But okay, back to the here and now. And let's stick on Minnesota. So I mentioned quickly Matt Dumba, but let's actually get a would you rather with him going, because Dumba's super cold right now. And he started the season on fire. He had 9 points in his first 11 games, but he's since gone pointless in 6. And I wrote that before today's game. The trick of doing a Sunday podcast where you prep in the morning and record at night. Let's see, what did Dumba do today? He got an assist. Okay, so getting off the schneid, at least picking up an apple. I wanted to compare him to Jacob Chikrin, who I brought up earlier, who's finally heating up after I was ready to leave him for dead, right? I came on the podcast and I was like, I'm ready to just like say I'm not expecting a lot of points from Chikrin this year. He now has 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 games. So if you're in a shallow league and you have Matt Dumba, and if Chychrun is sitting in free agency, is that a swap that you would make?
Yes, absolutely. I think now's a good time to get Jacob Chychrun, who, if you remember on the last show, I talked about just how poorly the Arizona Coyotes had been doing with Chychrun on the ice, and that I still had faith he could be a 40-point guy. Like, it was laughably misfortunate, except for Chychrun and anyone who rosters him. But yes, absolutely. For me, that's not even a second thought. Chychrun is regaining some fantasy value with what he's been doing lately. His shots never changed. He just needs some luck to turn. He's not going to be who he was last season, but he's still going to be rosterable, and that's more than I can say about Matt Dumba.
Oh, okay. I thought that maybe you'd be a little bit higher on Dumba after that hot start. He used to be a guy that we thought had super high upside, but obviously those times are gone.
He's let me down a lot since then.
That's fair. I actually traded him in my Dynasty League for Dawson Mercer last summer. That's obviously worked out really well for me so far, especially with Mercer on an ELC. Mwah. Okay, swapping back to deeper leagues, and we're on Arizona, so let's talk about another Coyote making waves in Lawson Krause, who's picked up points in 3 straight games, has 6 points in his last 7, and in a Bankers League, he's also helping you with hits. So Krause definitely needs to be included in our Would You Rather game, and I'm going to once again pit him against 3 players since you loved it so much when I did it for Vancouver. So let's compare Lawson Krause to 3 cold streak LA Kings in Dustin Brown, Alex Iafallo, and Phil Deneau. All 3 of those guys were looking good earlier on in the year, but now Brown is pointless in 5, Iafallo is pointless in 3, Deneau has a lone assist in his last 5 games, and and by the way, LA is playing today, so this will once again be the kind of thing that's totally out of date by the time you listen to this podcast, but while Iafallo and Deneau are at least holding their spots on the second line with Athanasiou, Dustin Brown has actually been bumped all the way to the bottom 6. He played with Trevor Moore and Rasmus Kupari on Saturday, while Adrian Kempe took Brown's spot over on the top line with Kopitar and the recently returning Victor Arvidsson, and Adrian Kempe scored a couple of goals on Saturday. Brown's on the second power play lately. Also, he used to be Dustin Brown used to be top line, top power play guy with Kopitar, and that's why I liked him. And even when he started this cold streak, I thought to myself, Dustin Brown, I mean, whatever, he's going to bounce back. He takes shots. He's playing with Kopitar. It's going to be great. But now he's not playing with Kopitar at any times, not at even strength nor on the power play. So I dropped him actually in tier 1 of the couples. Not to put my finger on the scale here, but yeah, Iafallo and Deneau, a little bit better deployment, like I said, but still doing nothing. So Brian, are you at a point where you'd consider dropping any or all of these 3 slumping Kings for a streaking Lawson Krause or someone of his ilk?
Well, let's focus on Lawson Krause specifically, who's been on our radars a lot this season, right? There's been some ups where it's like, go get him. I think on short shifts, they've also given him a lot of love for his hot streaks, which is great. Like Krause has been good, and then he goes quiet, and then he's good again, which is where he's at now. So you're asking me about these 3 LA Kings who maybe Krause's value exceeds right now. First off, Dustin Brown, third line, scary for Dustin Brown. The 37-year-old played just 10 minutes last night. Before that, Dustin Brown had a run of playing games where he was seeing like still 2 minutes per night less than he had been earlier in the year. So this has been like a slow but steady slide to where Dustin Brown has landed in minutes and line deployment. But the thing is that Brown's 5-on-5 production had been good to date, but he just has no power play points, which is hitting him hard. Do you know he's shot nearly 30% on the power play for the last 4 or 5 years? But Dustin Brown has no goals on 11 power play shots so far. So that's hurting him. And honestly, without this deployment slide, I'd have said, don't worry, just wait. But Dustin Brown's age mixed with his line, mixed with his dropping time on ice, I am a little worried. If he gets out of the doghouse, I'd want to hop on him pretty quick. But while he's in it, I have no interest in Dustin Brown. Alex Iafallo has never been a consistent threat for more than 50 points, but he is on a 65-point pace. And so I'm surprised you brought him up, even though he's been cold for the last few games. I don't think.
Well, yeah, that's the point of this segment. I'm bringing up guys who are on cold streaks right now.
Well, okay, but he was really good. Like, 65-point pace is really good for Alex Iafallo.
I'm like being defensive, like just because it's the segment that I made up. But like I would have never brought Alex Iafallo up at all if he hadn't had that hot streak to start the year. Because otherwise, obviously, you drop Iafallo for some hot player. So that's why now he might be on people's line.
Right.
Like, so now he might be in people's lineups. And I'm asking if they should drop him now that he's cold. And now you'll say whether or not you agree. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. I think that I would hold Iafallo over Krause, even though I just said like he's never been better than 50 points. He looks pretty good this year. And I think better than 50 points is reasonable to expect, maybe even 55, maybe even 60 from Iafallo. I like what I'm seeing. He also has 3 shots per game. So that makes him pretty rosterable and gives you some of those peripheral contributions that like would be the reason you'd add Lawson Krause. Phil Dano, I mean, you called him cold, Elon, and I called him Phil Dano. He's on a 43-point pace right now. 50-point pace would be nicer for sure, but consistent and relevant production is not something we've ever fully expected from Dano. So those 3 Kings, I would take Krause over Dano for sure. I would take him in the short term. Like I'd swap him out for Brown and then swap them back when Brown gets his deployment back. And I'd hold Iafallo over Krause.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, Dano, who I like the Dano, very American, I guess. But yeah, Dano is had a really hot run, right? That's why I thought maybe like might be a situation where like he came in a new situation away from Montreal. And he was able to really show off his offensive chops. He had like, what was it? Like, was a run of like 7 points in 7 games or something. But yeah, pointless in his last 3. And I guess you're saying that you don't believe that what he was doing before was sustainable. So, oh no. Apologies, one moment. Live shows are tough. Okay. So, all right. Sounds like I think we're probably pretty much in agreement. I've got Dano right now on my cupful team, and yeah, I could see myself dropping him for Lawson Krause next week. Unfortunately, Arizona doesn't have the best schedule next week. I think they only play 2 times, but at some point, I'd love to give Lawson Krause another swing. Okay.
Did you want to bring up Kempe?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I brought up Adrian Kempe before. Let me just mention, like, he's for sure, like, the easy add over all 4 of these guys, right? Like, line 1, power play 1. Basically the same spot that I said I was excited about Dustin Brown for. 6 goals in his last 8 games. Is it, like, a no question that if Kempe is available, then forget about any of, like, Iafallo, Dano, like, Brown, Lawson Krause, and probably a lot of other guys we've talked about on this episode. Conor Sherry.
Yes, well, especially because Sherry's injured now. But even if he wasn't, I'd want Adrian Kempe. He's doing that thing he does again. 15 shots in Kempe's last 3 games, including 6 goals in his last 9 games on 30 shots. I love it when Kempe does this. It never lasts, and he's useless when he doesn't. But when he is, you just got to go get him. He goes on these tears, and he's really fun to have for as long as it goes. Just keep an eye, because usually, if you're not paying close attention, you are snoozing on him for a few games when this all does peter out. But for now, I like him a lot.
Yeah, and don't forget the times when it hasn't lasted in the past, it's because Dustin Brown's taken that spot back. But like you said, Dustin Brown's 37 years old. He's not going to stay on the top line forever. So who knows? Maybe this is the moment that Kempe, the torch is finally getting passed, and Kempe is the new Dustin Brown on the top line in power play with Kopitar. I don't know. I'm not basing that on anything, but it's got to happen at some point, right? Okay, and since we're like talking about Arizona, because we were talking about Lawson Krause, let's do one more Arizona. Would you rather? Let's go back to goalies, Brian. And I want to do Scott Wedgwood versus Philip Grubauer. Would you rather? This is a question that before the season, I would have laughed you out of the room if you said that I would ask. But hear me out. Grubauer, he's been brutal, right? He's played 14 games, has only 4 wins, has an .875 save percentage. He's playing again today versus Washington. I'm seeing it's already 1-0 for Washington, and we're not even halfway through the first period. Tom Wilson scored a goal assisted by Kuznetsov, so we'll see how badly. I'm seeing like 1 goal against on 2 shots so far for Grubauer, so a typical Grubauer start. The worst part of all of this Grubauer badness is that the talk of the town is that Seattle has actually been playing well defensively, and they're just like not getting good goaltending. It's like when Devin Dubnyk was doing badly on Minnesota, right? And everyone was like, Minnesota's a good team. They just need an average goalie, and like he wasn't able to provide it. And right now, Grubauer is doing the same, and Chris Drieger not doing any better. By the way, he had 4 goals against on 13 shots before getting pulled against the Avs on Friday, and then compare him to Scott Wedgwood, someone who wasn't even in the league at the start of the year. But all of a sudden, he's taken over as the starter on Arizona, it seems. He's been getting starts more often than Karel Vejmelka recently. And Wedgwood has been money since joining the Coyotes. He has 1 goal against... Money since joining the Coyotes. He had 1 goal against on 34 shots in the 2-1 win over Detroit yesterday. He's had 5 starts now. He's won 3 of them For Arizona, that's an impressive feat, winning more than half your starts for the Coyotes. Two or fewer goals against in 4 of those 5 games. In the game where he led in more than 2 goals, he led in 4 goals versus Columbus, and that was on Thursday, and that was on 46 shots, so it wasn't even a bad game for him. So maybe like when I'm saying Grubauer versus Wedgwood, I'm basically asking like Grubauer versus like the current hotness, and obviously I'm not expecting that Wedgwood to be amazing all season long, but at this point, if you're like trying to win now, and you've got Grubauer, is it time to just drop him and grab a Wedgwood or someone like that that's on a hot run?
So I've been told to, I'm doing this because I've been told to do a little victory lap on Philip Grubauer, even though this is not a victory and I don't think it's over, but this isn't like unprecedented from Philip Grubauer that he's bad. Last year, Grubauer was bad at 5-on-5, but amazing shorthanded, which was like, but his amazing shorthanded play was covering up his deficiencies at 5-on-5 and kind of called attention to it and questioned it. And then by the end of the season, Grubauer's 5-on-5 play leveled out to being almost an average goalie at 5-on-5. But this year, we're seeing a similar story play out where Grubauer is having this terrible outing at 5-on-5 and still above average on the penalty kill. So just imagine how bad he'd be. Like, I'm actually like wondering if this is who Grubauer is. Like, we've never seen someone who can be reliably really great on the penalty kill. And I'm wondering, like, could you imagine if Grubauer is the first short-handed goalie specialist and teams started getting him and putting him in when their team went shorthanded? It's like, okay, you play the penalty kill and then come back out and we'll put our better 5-on-5 goalie in. That'd be really funny.
Yeah, that's never happened. So yeah, that would be really cool. Hard to imagine.
Yeah. But in the crease, like, Seattle is too good defensively, and I think they're a good team. We've said before, like, just give Grubauer and Seattle some time to all figure each other out. But yeah, it's getting really frustrating. And so you're looking to Scott Wedgwood, who has been great. We've seen this before from him, by the way, in his first cups of coffee in New Jersey. He went on these really great runs and they didn't last. And so that's one reason to be skeptical that Wedgwood is going to be worth it this time. He's also in Arizona, which is a great spot for volume, but not for anything else. And it might not even be a great spot for volume, because if Wedgwood gets shelled often enough and doesn't hold up, well, he's not going to hold the net. So I sort of have him in the same place that we've put a lot of other goalies we've talked about this year, like Vejmelka and Hutton for starters, Karlsson and Anderson in Buffalo, Jake Allen, Philip Gustafsson and Matt Murray, Stuart Skinner, even to some extent. Like, we're looking at a goalie who is not going to get you, like, scratch Skinner from this list, but a goalie who's not going to get you a whole lot of wins and is risky each time you play him. But if you want volume and if you want to roll the dice, then you can go Scott Wedgwood. If I could afford to be patient with my goalies and acknowledge that goalies are super random week to week, I would just hold Grubauer. But if it's like red alert and you need to make a move, then you could swap out Grubauer for Wedgwood. But I just wouldn't recommend it, because I think as good as Wedgwood has been, it's unlikely that he's going to be this good the rest of the way. And Grubauer has more upside to be good than Wedgwood does.
All right. I guess like the thing is, like, it's hard to disagree, because like everything you're saying about Wedgwood, I agree with. It's just he's been good lately, right? So I need to like point him out, and like people could maybe grab him while he's hot. But like the thing with Grubauer is if you hold him, fine. But like I wouldn't play him. Like he's like unless you're in a league that's really fair. Just like, you know, if you benefit from just getting saves and there's not too much of a penalty for goals against, then fine. But like in a categories league, like you're risking your save percentage if you play Grubauer at this point. So if you want to hold him, be patient. To me, that's like you're just burning a roster spot on him waiting, because I would be too afraid to put him in my net. Okay.
Agreed. Yeah. So start Grubauer at your own risk and start Wedgwood at your own risk. But if I want one just sitting on my bench for the right time, it's Grubauer. Like, it feels really hard to drop him. If he was dropped in one of my leagues, like, I haven't suffered with him this year, so I would take him on and hope that I don't have to suffer with him. But yeah, I'd be interested in Grubauer if he was made available to me, but also understanding how hard it's been for anyone who has him, and there's no guaranteed light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, so then it sounds like you're going to be making a trade offer to the Grubauer manager in Cupful Tier 2 Auto. I'll be curious to hear who you offer. Okay, so next up, let's do another Would You Rather, which was provided to us, and he didn't know that he was providing this for this segment, this content, but Terry G29 from our Discord asked a question that I thought was interesting, where he was asking if he should offer up his Sam Reinhart to another manager for Timo Meier. And, you know, it makes sense on paper that you'd prefer to have Reinhart. If you look at the ADPs of of these guys. Like for the cupful specifically, Reinhart was being taken like 82nd overall on average, while Meier was being taken at 125. But, Meier was on the COVID protocol for a while, but he came back at the end of last week, and he's continued his torrid start to the season. Even after Samsonov shut out the team yesterday, Meier still sits at 15 points in 12 games on the season. And in that scoreless game on Saturday, Meier gave a season high 6 hits to his managers. So he made sure to give you something, even if he wasn't going to give you a point. By the way, a side thing on San Jose is that Jonathan Dahlin is injured, and it looks like maybe Rudolf Balcers might take over on his line with Couture. So I don't know, something to watch, whatever. I want to compare Timo Meier to Sam Reinhart, who has not met the super high expectations we had for him back on draft day. Like Florida scored 5 goals on Saturday, but Reinhart somehow didn't factor in on any, nor did he manage a shot. And that extended his pointless streak to 4 games. And what's worse than having a player that you expect to be a high-end player on your team, then you see that the team scores 4, and then you don't even give anything like a value for so that's the most frustrating thing, right? And so with Barkov out, and it might, by the way, be short term, like Barkov seems like he's like a beast. Like he's kind of like David Pasternak, where like you see this injury and they announce he's gonna be out for weeks, then it turns out he's gonna be like back in like 5 days. So I wouldn't be surprised if Barkov is back in a week or two. He's already been skating apparently. But anyways, with him out, Reinhardt has been playing on the second line with Verhaeghe and Lundell. Definitely not the deployment drafters were hoping for. People were hoping that Reinhardt would be playing with Barkov or at least Huberdeau. Right now he's playing with neither. And don't forget, even when Barkov was in the lineup, in the game where Barkov got hurt, the Panthers had been mixing things up, and they put Barkov, Huberdeau, and Duclair on the top line, leaving Reinhart with Bennett and Verhaeghe. So, Brian, at this point, Reinhart's career high with Buffalo was 65 points back in 2018-19. Currently, he's pacing for 50. So, along with comparing him to Timo Meier, which to me actually is a pretty easy answer at this point. So, to make it a little more challenging, I also am curious to know, do you think that Reinhart's going to come anywhere close to challenging his career high, which is a question, by the way, going into the season. I thought, like, is it like a for sure thing that he's going to beat his career high? Now it's like, will he even come close to it?
I'm hoping he can approach it, but like you said, a lot of it is going to depend on the deployment. And to summarize a lot of what you said, Sam Reinhart's deployment has not been awesome, and he doesn't seem to be the first choice for Florida to really like do anything with, aside from that start of the season where he did have a crack up in the top 6. Since then, he just like has not earned that time or deployment back. And all season long, actually, he's been really playing like 15 minutes a night, compared to his Buffalo days where like they leaned on him hard, especially his last 2 years there. He was playing 20 minutes a night as he came into his own. He's 26 years old. He just turned 26 a couple of weeks ago. This should be prime Sam Reinhart, and Florida acquired him and is not seeming to give him a full chance, which is interesting. I'm not really sure what it means, but to me, at least in the short term, it means that I don't expect Sam Reinhart to be able to reach his past career high of around 65 points. And with Timo Meier, man, I love what we're seeing. I see where I see where Meier is overperforming at 5-on-5. He has some high percentages working for him, but I think Meier could still be a 70-point player. And honestly, I think if he gets going on the power play, I'm open to more. Like we've seen him have this good 70-point season before without that, but now Meier has that opportunity on the power play. And Elon, I'm just going to say it. I think there's a chance Meier eclipses 80 points this year.
Wow. I mean, you mean pace, right? Because he missed some time. So that would be extra appealing. But yeah, he's doing really well. He's in a good spot. He's fine. With Evander Kane out of the picture, it looks like Meier's like going to be holding this top power play deployment. So everything's looking good for Meier. By the way, there's been some news and notes recently about Evander Kane that he apparently was practicing, like not with the team, but in the arena. So I know some people were saying he can't practice because the Sharks were like holding on to his equipment. So who knows? Anyway, the suspension is almost up. So that's a whole side story that we're not going to get into right now. But there's been some interesting tweets that Shams has been retweeting from the Game Day News NHL account. So go on the Athletic or go on that account if you want to keep up with the latest on Evander Kane. We have no idea. The long answer though the short answer is that we have no idea if he's going to play or not. There's been no indication. He might come back in like 2 weeks, or he might not play all season. So if he's available in your free agency, and people have been asking us what you should do, it's like honestly, like I don't know. Okay, like I can't help you. I just have no idea.
We have no idea. And while you went on the San Jose sidebar, I'm going to go on a little Florida sidebar and just shout out Carter Verhaeghe, who's really stepped up in Barkov's absence. He has 3 goals in 3 straight games on just 7 shots. So it's not that exciting, but overall 10 points in Verhaeghe's last 10 games. Before that, he was cold for 4 games. Before that, he was on a 4-game point streak. I'm just, it's nice to see him continue the run he's been on. in Florida, even without Barkov. I mean, I don't think this goal scoring is at all sustainable, but it's really nice for anyone rostering him, such as myself, that when Barkov was out, I have Barkov and Verhaeghe on a couple squads. I'm like, oh no, Barkov's out. That almost like takes out two of my players, but Verhaeghe has held a candle until Barkov's return. So way to go, Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah, I've got him in a couple leagues as well, and I felt the same thing, and I'm very happy that he's been good. Unfortunately, I didn't believe in him enough to like play him in one of my leagues yesterday. It was like a busy Saturday, and I left him on my bench, and then he scored a goal. And I was like, of course, I made the wrong choice. I have Duclair in that league also, and I played Duclair and sat Verhaeghe. Obviously made the wrong choice, but long term, hopefully they'll both be good, and we'll see how the lines shake out when Barkov is back. Because like I said, they were starting to shake things up even before that injury. Okay, and by the way, you asked about like why is Florida not giving Reinhart a chance? Like at the end of the day, like we can't really question them too much because they keep winning games. So obviously they're just an awesome team, and maybe they just don't need Reinhart to play that role that he played in Buffalo. Maybe that's the best way for them to win games, maybe similar to Taylor Hall in Boston. And Taylor Hall, I was considering bringing him up as like a snoozer in today's episode. He had a couple points, a couple games back, so I decided to like give him a pass, but I'm getting pretty tired of Taylor Hall. If I had him on one of my fantasy teams, I'd be getting really nervous at this point, especially since he's been bumped from the top power play. But anyways, okay, one more would you rather, then we'll do some quick hits to end the show. So going back to deeper league options, New Jersey had a big game on Saturday, coming back from being down 2 in the third to beat Tampa Bay 5-3. And the big contributor, the big hero in that game was Yegor Sharangovich, who appeared to take over from Andreas Johnsson on line 2 with Mercer and Bratt. And Sharangovich had a big game, 2 goals and 1 assist, including the game-winning goal. I believe it was just last week that we were talking about this like Johnsson, Bratt, Mercer line and how great they'd been. I'm not sure what happened. Like, I'm definitely going to be watching game day lines and watching those New Jersey beat writer line tweets to see if it's going to be Sharangovich or Johnsson playing with Mercer in Bratt. But I want that third person on that line right now. Because first of all, like no point rehashing too much, but Bratt and Mercer continue to be hot. Bratt has 12 points in his last 11 games. Mercer has 7 points in his last 6 games. If Sharangovich is going to take that spot, he's a guy who we saw last year put up a good run when he was moved into good deployment. I believe he was playing with Hischier or Jack Hughes. I think he was playing with Jack Hughes, right? It was like Hughes, Sharangovich, and Kokkonen, and they were doing really well together at points. So now if he's going to be able to play with the red hot Bratt and Mercer, that could be good. So let's throw Sharangovich up against a guy who we mentioned earlier, and now I'm going to make it official, Brian, Alex Radulov. I told you that I'd bring him back, right? So both are actually free agents for me in Tier 1 Sweden right now. I remember actually Radulov was a free agent a few weeks ago, and I remember I asked you if I should grab him, and you said, yeah, you probably should. And then, of course, I'm like a bad friend. Like, I always ask you for advice and I never listen, and usually I regret it. But this time I actually was happy I didn't grab him because someone else took him, and he did nothing. Now he's back in free agency, and I could grab him, or I could grab Sharangovich, or I could grab a bunch of other people, and obviously it depends on the schedule. But yeah, that's my would you rather, Sharangovich or Radulov. Who do you like better? Not even for like the rest of the season, for the next few weeks.
This is the closest I've come in this whole game to just saying nobody. I really like...
What?
Yeah.
Playing with Bratt and Mercer. What a sweet spot.
So I'm interested in anyone playing with Bratt and Mercer, but Andreas Johnsson was playing with Bratt and Mercer for a bit and not doing a whole lot. Like he had a little run, but then he went quiet. So I'm wondering if it's not a guarantee that playing with Mercer and Bratt is going to get you anything, because I think Mercer and Bratt are also overperforming. That 3-point game for Sharangovich was really exciting, but those were also his first points after a 9-game pointless drought. Some of those games were shortened, I think, by like some injuries or injury concerns, but just keep in mind that's not awesome. Meanwhile, Alex Radulov, also not awesome at all. And he's someone, like I did tell you to have faith in the league I co-manage with a friend of the pod, John Newhold, former Cupful Stat Attack host. We have Radulov, and like I've been the one saying like keep him. Like things look okay. Radulov doesn't look great, but he looks okay. And honestly, I'm like, if I'm losing patience with Alex Radulov, I can only imagine how other people are feeling, because he's a guy that I want to believe in, and I see the talent, but man, it's just not showing up. And again, just another victim of this Dallas Stars team. But I'm not just saying he's a victim of this Dallas Stars team. I think he also just hasn't been very good. He's not up to his usual level of play. He is also getting some bad percentages, but overall, he's really like, he has entered essentially snoozer territory. The last time I thought that, though, he went on a 4-game point streak and ended up having points in 6 of 7. Now Radulov's been quiet for 3, but recently had a season high 5-shot game, which is why I'm still sort of standing by my guy, even though he played fewer than 13 minutes in that 5-shot game. But I really don't like either. If you have Radulov, you can probably move on and try and grab someone more exciting. I don't know that Sharangovich qualifies as more exciting.
No, right here, say Sharangovich. Go from I don't think, just because we've had it right the whole time.
Okay. I don't think Sharangovich qualifies as more exciting, but if you're tired of Radulov, he's at least a change of scenery.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way to put it. And yeah, since we're on Jersey, I'll just mention really quickly, not that I'm saying I expect this to keep up, but nice to see PK Subban on a nice run. He has a goal and 5 assists in his last 6 games. He's not getting any power play time, kind of pulling a Shillington at the moment, though actually Shillington's started to get power play time on Calgary since he started his hot run. So yeah, I don't know. I'm in a couple leagues where it's really hard to find a D, and so Subban is starting to bubble up to the top of my free agent list. Is he of any interest to you anywhere?
Sorry, who I was reading. Oh, Subban. Okay.
You could just do a quick answer.
Yeah. Yes, he is of interest, especially while he's producing. I don't think that this production is totally sustainable for him. His points participation is double what it normally is. It's crazy. Like, it's high for what would be a forward. So it's super high for a defenseman. And he's getting a ton of secondary assists. But it's nice to see him find a bit of his groove. And I'm hoping that he can be, I don't know, a 40-point guy the rest of the season, like pace-wise. That's what I'd be looking for from Subban. Right now, he's on still just a 46-point pace with this fortuitous, percentage situation. So that's why I'm not going over the moon for Subban, but he does seem like, if you have a defenseman get injured, say, he looks like a suitable short-term replacement.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would expect 40-point pace from Subban. But, throwback to those times when we used to debate Karlsson versus Subban, who's the best defenseman to have in fantasy. Feels like a long time ago at this point. You're old when. Okay, let's do some quick hits to end the show now. That's the end of our Would You Rather game. Please tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know what you thought of this segment of the show. We're trying to bring you some fresh ways to present. Like, basically every week, we're just telling you hot streaks, cold streaks, and injuries and outjuries, right? And we're just trying to find a fun way to freshen it up. So let us know what you thought about the Would You Rather game. But yeah, we'll end the show with some quick hits. Let's start in Nashville. Matt Duchene had a third period hat trick yesterday versus Montembeault and the Habs in a too little too late comeback attempt. Granlund, of course, assisted on 2 of those goals because they've just been producing together all season long. Duchene is now at 12 goals and 19 points in 17 games on the season. Granlund at 18 points in those 19 games. 15 of those are assists. Oh, sorry. Granlund is at 18 points in those 17 games. 15 of those points are assists, but still over a point per game. Granlund, by the way, only 36% rostered on Yahoo. Seems kind of insane to me. What league are you in where you're not grabbing Mikael Granlund, who's over a point per game, playing with the red-hot Matt Duchene? To me, I don't know. They're kind of looking like maybe the Sedins of the South. Or is Nashville the South? I don't know exactly where it is, but
cool. But did you come up with that by yourself?
I just came up with it. Well, just because Duchene's scoring all the goals and Granlund's getting all the assists. It just reminded me of Henrik and Daniel. Well, I guess Daniel and Henrik specifically. And I just want to know, are you expecting any reason to expect a fall off from these guys, or is this just going to be a huge bounce back year for both Duchene and Granlund making beautiful music together over in Nashville? Beautiful country music
in the Music City. It's hard. Granlund has burned me so many times. I've talked about this on the show before, that it's really hard for me to get behind anything he does right now. I mean, his power play production has gone haywire, and Nashville is shooting 22% on the power play when Granlund's on the ice. And I think that's driving a lot of his numbers. He has all assists, by the way. He has 5 assists on 10 on ice goals, 4 while Granlund's on the power play. So that's been a really nice piece that Granlund has put in his game this year. Even with power play time in the past, Granlund has never been so great at capitalizing. His 5-on-5 production is actually remarkably similar to past years. So, I mean, it really shows. Granlund has 5 power play points in 17 games so far this year. In his last about 115 games, he had 13 power play points total. So it's been a while since Granlund was actually cashing in on the power play. It's nice he's doing that now with actually similar deployment to what he had and did nothing with last year. But remember, the Nashville power play has been broken since Granlund arrived. And I don't think I'm blaming him for it by saying that. But it's nice to see some signs of life from both him and Duchene. They're both must rosters for the moment. I can't get too far ahead on either guy because they've crushed a lot of people along the way with a lot of up and down years and weeks and days. But for now, Duchene and Granlund absolutely should be rostered in all formats.
Yeah, Duchesne especially, just because goals usually are worth even more, and Granlund, come on, 36%. If you have Granlund in your free agency, we offer a free service, which maybe we should charge for. But you could tweet at us at Kevin Karlsson and ask us your ad drop question. I'd be curious to see your roster, and then I could suggest someone that you probably will want to drop for Granlund because right now he's running hot. Obviously, now that I say it, maybe he'll cool off, but hard to argue with what he's been doing so far. Next up, let's go to Columbus. Jacob Voracek pulling a Henrik Sedin of his own. He's got 1 goal and 14 assists on the season in 15 games. So a point per game, Jacob Voracek. He was actually dropped to free agency in Cupful Tier 1 at one point when Columbus had a bad schedule in a week. How badly did I blow it by not scooping up Voracek? I remember thinking at the time, yeah, I'm sure he'll be good, but like Laine's injured. Oh, by the way, condolences to Laine. His dad died, and that's very sad, of course. But Laine's injured, and I thought Voracek's playing with like Sillinger or whoever. Like he's good, but he's not that great right now. Anyways, regardless, Voracek's having like going back to like the vintage mid-teens Flyers Voracek that we used to love back when he used to crack 80 points a couple of times. Do you think he's going to do it again this year?
Those seasons that Voracek got near or cracked 80 points was thanks to huge power play production, like 30 plus point seasons. And that's what he's pacing for right now with 8 power play points in 15 games. His 5-on-5 production, just like Granlund, is the same, but he's really starting to make use of what's going on the power play. 1 power play goal, 7 power play assists. In fact, Voracek in 15 games has matched his 53-game power play total from last season. So way to go, Jacob Voracek, for getting off to that crazy, crazy start. Whether that's all sustainable, I mean, I don't think it's all sustainable, but I do think that more of it is sustainable than I would have thought at first blush. Like if he, and like Boone Jenner's on that top unit too, and finding new life in this role as like a shooter and finisher. Like Boone Jenner's expected goals rates on the power play are insane compared to where they've been everywhere else for his career, like at 5-on-5 and on the power play. And I feel like that's something that's going on with Jacob Voracek too. That Columbus power play seems like a good place to be. I don't see Voracek pacing for like the 45 power play points he's currently pacing for, but I do see 25, maybe even 30 on the rise. And if things keep breaking right for him, which should put him in line for, I would hope, a 70-ish point pace season, assuming everything holds at 5-on-5, which so far it has.
Yeah, so good job so far, Jacob Voracek. And seems like he'll be able to, if he doesn't hit 80, he will likely hit 70 this year with the role he's getting and the way he's been playing. Okay, then let's finish off over in Vegas, where it looks like we're going to have a bunch of outjuries coming soon. Max Pacioretty might be returning to Vegas next week. I thought he was still going to be a few weeks away, but I saw all of a sudden yesterday he was like skating at practice, and then like they announced last minute that he wasn't going to play, but that must mean that he is going to play soon. Marchessault, don't forget, is on the COVID protocol, so you never really hear about these guys on the COVID protocol, but like any day now they could just announce that COVID protocol is over for Marchessault, so he might be back. By the way, Shea Theodore has been injured. So that's kind of a sad thing that he's like on his way out right now. Sad thing right now. He hit his head on the boards on Tuesday versus Carolina, but he's been skating, so I think he's probably not out too long from what I've been seeing. Also, don't forget that Alec Martinez is injured. His face was cut with a skate. Just like these Vegas players have just had terrible luck this season with these injuries, but we might be at a point where almost everyone will be back. I think it might still be a little while for William Karlsson, but aside from that, a lot of big things. I guess we're also waiting still for Jack Eichel. That's going to be a couple of months. But let's think about this. With all these guys back, I've been into Evgeny Dadonov while he's been playing with Mark Stone in the Pacioretty role. It's been Dadonov with Stone and Stevenson, both at even strength and on the power play. Dadonov had that big 2 goals and 1 assist game versus Vancouver last week. Only 1 assist in 3 games this week, but he did take 11 shots. And I saw some tweets saying like Dadonov and Stone were playing well together. So I was into him. And then I was also thinking like I'll only be interested in Dadonov like until Pacioretty comes back, because Pacioretty will obviously bump him from that spot. But now I'm starting to imagine maybe a situation where, I don't know, like maybe Vegas goes with like Marchessault, Dadonov, and Riley Smith on one line, then Pacioretty with Stone and Stevenson on another line for a really nice stacked top 6. Then, you could have your top power play with like Stone, Patches, Marchessault, Dadonov, and either Pietrangelo or Theodore. So I don't know, maybe Dadonov will be someone. I know I keep switching between Dadonov and Dadonov. I think it's Dadonov, right? So I'll try to get that right moving forward. But yeah, he might still have some interest in me, obviously a lot less once Pacioretty comes back. So I guess that's my overall recap. And I guess I'll throw out one more take, and I'm not really asking you a question, so at the end I'll just be like, thoughts? But don't forget, Alec Martinez had that great year last year, and he's like stunk this year. Like, before he got hurt, only 3 assists in 11 games. But keep in mind that most of those games where Martinez was going pointless, like most of Vegas was going pointless, right? Like they just weren't producing with both Stone and Pacioretty out of the lineup. Like Martinez did have actually 2 assists in his first 3 games when everyone was healthy, and then he went quiet when everyone was gone. So he's fallen to FA in a couple of my leagues. Like, just someone to watch, right? If Martinez is in free agency for you, once the whole band is back together, I'm not necessarily expecting Martinez to go all the way back to what he did last year, but he probably will do better than he's been so far. So he's someone I would look at if you need a defenseman once he's back.
What a great rundown there, Elon. Like a lot of speculation, obviously. So keep an eye on Game Day Lines on Twitter to see how lines shake out as all these Vegas players come back. I like the thought of keeping an eye on Alec Martinez or even like Pietrangelo and Theodore, who have had a tough time, or Chandler Stevenson, while Stone and Pacioretty have been out. I like your creativity, Elon, in thinking like reimagining the Vegas lines, but they've been what they've been for so long. I'm curious. Like, I'm very open to it. We'll see if they actually go through with it. For me,
well, no, but like Karlsson's injured, right? That's why I'm rethinking it. Like, they have to do something different.
Yeah, you're right. So we'll see. Like, I don't know. Okay, sorry. I'll come in from after Karlsson. Of course. So I think like my only advice, like that's a great little rundown of the situation, Elon. And my only advice is to keep a close eye on the lines using Game Day News and Frozen Tools.
Yeah, by the way, here's just a random apropos of nothing. The Leafs just scored their 3rd goal of the game against the Islanders, and it looks like Michael Bunting is back on the good line. Like, he was bounced down to the bottom 6, and he just assisted on a goal by Mitch Marner. So I don't know. In your super deep leagues, maybe take a look again at Michael Bunting, who I know we recommended in the past, and he turned out to go bust. But I like anyone who's playing with Matthews and Marner, of course. Oh, and also, Brian, you wanted me to mention that Victor Olofsson is back for Buffalo. He was doing really well today for Buffalo. So he got nothing.
No, he got 1 assist. Well, how about just let me take it from today in Buffalo?
Okay, today in Buffalo,
he got 1 assist and just a single shot, which is like what Olofsson's been doing a lot of lately. Like a little while just before his injury, we were saying that what Olofsson had been up to was not sustainable. Like he was off to this really torrid start. I'm actually just bringing up his numbers now. Victor Olofsson is on a 91 point pace with 10 points in his first 9 games, but he's shooting 22%. His points participation is high. Like nothing about this tells me it's for real. And in fact, like some of his numbers under the hood look a little just a tidge dicey. And so like line 1, power play 1 is great if that's where Olofsson is playing, but he's also in Buffalo, which is not a great place to be playing. Although we did find a trio of Sabres who might be worth rostering last week, he's not someone I would be overly attached to and would be trying to peddle if I had Olofsson on my roster.
Oh, right. Olofsson back on the top line. That means our episode title from last week is now out of date. That was a really good one. Despite all my rage, I've got Rasmus, Skinner, and Tage. But now it's Skinner, Tage, and Victor. So I don't know if it really fits as well. So you'll have to come up with something new this week, Brian, which I guess was the plan anyway. I know you were asking in the chat here about a Seth Jarvis pun that you could go for. Did you come up with something?
I've got something, and everybody will have already seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's true when you download the episode. Okay.
If you're listening.
Well, if you're watching live, then it's a mystery to you, like it is to me at the moment. Okay, so thanks everyone so much for listening to another episode of Keeping Karlsson. We hope that we made it worth your while. Hopefully this was time well spent as we ran through a bunch of hot streaks and cold streaks, played some games, had some fun, and here we are at the end looking forward to another big week of fantasy action, except for on Thursday, where we're all going to be forced to take a bit of a break. And definitely check out the Stream Scheme episode, Brian mentioned it earlier, by Dave Betton, where he breaks down the schedule for next week to help you make your decisions of who you may want to stream in and stream out. Okay, but with that, Brian, what else should I say? Oh yeah, we have our contest going, right? If you want to be so kind as to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a comment and then tag us in a tweet with a screenshot so that we can add you to our contest. We're going to do a Michael raffle at the end of the month, and the winner of that raffle will get a cool piece of Keeping Karlsson merch, a t-shirt. So, help us out. It's like a nice thing you could do. We'd really appreciate it. And we'll, send a shirt to the lucky winner of that contest. Also, if you really enjoy the show and want to get like the Keeping Karlsson experience 24/7, because that's really what it feels like to me, come join the patron community that we have over on Discord, where we've just got really smart people talking fantasy, like all day, all night long. It's just a blast. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. Like people join and then they tell us like, I really like all this cool stuff you've got going on in the Discord. Like it's almost like hard to explain. We made a video of it that actually you can see on our YouTube page. Or I think it's on our Patreon or something. But anyways, we've got these bots that are posting lots of useful tips. We have a way for you to ask questions and create your own thread, so your questions won't get buried. And like just a lot of other cool stuff to make sure that we're going to be able to help. Like Brian and I will see all your questions and be able to try to give you help. But also like all the patrons are really smart. Like you don't only want help from Brian and I. You want to get the hive mind of Keeping Karlsson super fans who are so nice to support our podcast. So if you're interested in joining that community and also getting like the patron cast and some other cool perks, show notes, check out keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But okay, with that, Brian, I think we're ready to call it a night. So I'm going to cue up the outro music. Bing! And then why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Rob, David, Derek, Tom, Andrea, Christopher, and Flash. If you want to be a super supporter, just do what Elon was just talking about. Head on over to patreon.com/keepingkarlsson. Thanks to our Cupful coordinator, Kevin Hebert, and our team of co-commissions for more information on the Cupful. And to see, like you can click through and see the standings in our top tier division, kkupfl.com. Thanks as always to Shams for keeping the amazing stream of fantasy relevant news rolling on our 3 key Twitter accounts, Game Day Lines at Game Day News, Twitter accounts at Game Day Lines, at Game Day News NHL, and at Game Day Goalies. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. Researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, NBC Sports Edge, and Yahoo.
Great job as always, Brian. And yeah, I'm looking at Game Day News NHL right now, and I see Shams just retweeted recently that Brock Nelson didn't come back for the third period for the Islanders. So there's some news for you that you could have known 33 minutes ago if you were following that Game Day News NHL with notifications like I have on my phone. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, great job, Brian. Looking forward to some more content this week. We're going to have a couple short shifts coming at you as per usual with the great Ben Burnett and Louis Ezekiel. So you want to be subscribed to Keeping Karlsson to make sure you're getting all of our episodes. And then I'll be back at you with another fun mega episode next Sunday. Brian, I'm really looking forward to doing that in a week.
Until then, keep doing what you're doing to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
There we go. Another show in the books, sort of. Like we still have to edit it, but like, it's a nice feeling to get to have a show out. I think it was a good one.
Do you know that Shams just shared something in our general server that the Isles have 5 power play goals and have given up 3 shorthanded, so they're a +2 as a team on the power play.
You mean today or on the season?
On the season.
Oh, okay. That's not
terrible.
good. Yeah, Islanders. So you have Sorokin and Varlamov, right?
Yeah.
Couple. Well, Sorokin's actually not doing so
life
bad
sucks.
today.
Yeah.
But
like
nice.
I just thought, okay, I never have to worry about these two, and I've had to worry about those two.
Yeah, it would be really nice if you could just. Yeah.
My goodness.
Are you considering dropping Varlamov, or are you still gonna hold it, or maybe trade? I don't know. But what could you even get for him?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think. Would I grab Varlamov if he was dropped? Like I feel like I just want to have a goalie that I could depend on to play like 2 times a week.
So if he's gonna play, I think he's gonna play. Like say he plays 2 times a week and he gets 6 points. That's 3 points.
Well, yeah, that's good. But 2 times a week isn't guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
If they're going 50-50, then for 3 game weeks, you might have some weeks where there's only 1 game.
Right. So at that point, then it's worth holding on to him because then Sorokin, I don't know. It's
tricky.
It's tricky. It hasn't been as fun as I hoped it would be, let me tell you.
Well, at least you were hoping that if you did have this tandem, they would put up amazing numbers every time they played.
Right. Which hasn't happened. I'm still hoping it might.
Yeah. Well, it looks like today it's not Sorokin's fault. 37 saves on 40 shots, but the Islanders can't score, so that makes it tough. And Anders Lee's out on the they have COVID issues right now also.
Yeah, they might have some postponed games coming up, which would be really hurtful.
Oh boy. Okay. This COVID thing. I wonder what year, like what season do you think will be the first season that there's no COVID protocols?
I have no idea.
Might be like 3-4 seasons from now.
This isn't That's not a fun thing to think about.
I know. Life's sometimes not fun. I don't know. I apologize. Okay, so thanks everyone for watching.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
No,
I forgot to put my Tim's picks in.
Okay, well, you could maybe catch it in time for LA versus Arizona if you go into the next minute.
Gonna be tight.
Get I don't know, Kopitar. Oh, Lawson Krause, as we've discussed. And maybe Chikrin. I wonder if you could get the three of them. That wouldn't be so bad. Oh, Adrian Kempe. Grab him. Are you gonna make it in time?
There's lists.
Come on, quick.
I'm working on it. Okay.
You have 1 minute. Kempe, do it.
Kempe, Arvidsson.
Do it.
And Gostisbehere.
Gostisbehere, do it. Lock it in.
Boom.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Nice. Let me see who I have.
I'm not sure where Krause was. Like what box? Oh, are you playing?
I've been doing it this year.
Well, that's fine.
I just haven't been engaging in the chat because the whole like it's fun. I'm glad that people are having fun. Like I'm not saying anything against them, but to me, it's just like we all just say who we put. And I don't know.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, I guess I like it at the end. Like I like when we're like cheering for our person to score. I haven't been engaging. I have been engaging in there. Just I'm not engaging in like the daily ritual of like posting who I put. But sometimes I join in for the end of the night, looking at how we did. But yeah, that's just one of the fun places over on the Discord, which I'm glad exists. Last year I ignored it completely because I wasn't playing. Okay, I had today Matthews, Fiala, and Geeky. So how did I do? Fiala scored, as we discussed. So I got him.
Fiala scored.
What, has Matthews scored?
I don't know.
No, he has not. 2 goals for Marner. Give me a break. All right, and then Morgan Geeky. I'm sure he's not doing anything. Kraken, Jared McCann. All right, Geeky had a power play assist. Assists don't count for Tim Hortons. Have you ever cashed in? I don't even know how to cash in this thing.
It's actually very complicated. Like it's like their point system is terrible.
I want to get a bagel. That's my favorite thing at Tim Hortons. I'll just buy a bagel, I guess. You know what bugs me? Have you ever been to New York before? Yeah, we went once together.
Yeah.
Like their bagels are so good. And like in Toronto, there's like Montreal style bagels everywhere. But it's like, why? Where's the New York style bagels? Like, there's one place I could find. You'd think that they should be equal. Like New York's like not that much farther away than Montreal is.
It's true. Maybe this is your opportunity.
Yeah, it is a business opportunity. I've had a few like of these like restaurant-y business ideas, but the actual idea of running a restaurant seems not so fun. Chicago just scored. Brandon Hagel. All right, okay, I'll let you go.
You can stay in chat. I'm gonna go. Because
I
need a lot of sleep tonight to feel good.
Bye everyone.
Thanks everyone for being here. You're the greatest.
See ya.
Bye.
Stream.